Well, welcome back, everybody, to the fourth and final set of the SCC here in week number 3. We're still in NA, and we're still with Locked and Goated, fresh off a win over Mexadi. On set, they will be playing Trick Babushka here in this set. Aggro joins me to round out the day, and I think Aggro, Locked and Goated, rather, they're probably riding high on some of that momentum after a big win.
No doubt. I think that this is a team in Locked and Goated that should be considered the cream of the crop in the North American SCC. It's really them and Basket and the boys, I think, are head and shoulders above everybody else in this region right now. And that includes their opponent today, Trick Babushka. Though Trick Babushka do have a lot of things going for them. I've liked the way that Mineral's played so far in that support role. BrandonBalls has looked okay in that solo lane from time to time, though consistency seems to be a bit of an issue for him. I think that you're looking at this Locked and Goated roster as one that has potential to be a premier contender in this region.
I absolutely agree, and as we mentioned, fresh off a 2-0 win over Mexadi on set, we'll look to replicate that performance here against Trick Babushka. But I think one thing, Aggro, that we have to look at, especially just prior to jumping into picks and bans for game number 1, is some of the curious and maybe oddball picks that Locked and Goated obviously feel comfortable wrapping towards. I mean, whether it's a Hercules jungle and Anubis in the mid lane, swapping where you might expect the Naja to be, whatever it is, Locked and Goated seem comfortable trying it out.
I mean, Cyno has always been that type of player to play different things all the time. He's played Chernobog jungle, he's played Raijin jungle, he's playing Hades jungle now. He's clearly started the shell trend. The last game that his team had 4 shells on it. This is a guy who's creative, who's won an awful lot of Smite games in his career, and is clearly a leader for this team. And I think that makes them fun to watch, man. You never know exactly what you're going to get when you're watching Locked and Goated.
Well, Hebo, the only maybe curious ban taken away from Locked and Goated here. We have seen some success out of the Hebo, so not another world of surprise there, but not mainly in that first round of bans. But that does open up Locked and Goated to pick up Camazotz first. And I think you have to do that. If he's left open for pick number 1, I think he's too strong, too important. I think you have to take him away.
Yeah, I completely agree. Kukulkan is open, and I like Trick Babushka going straight to that for ShadowChair, and I love pairing it with this Naja. This is a classic combination. Naja plus big damage mage ult equals consistent success, and this Naja is a flex pick. It can go into the jungle. It can be played support by Mineral. RelentlessOne's been playing it in solo lane, so maybe Brandon can do the same, but it takes it away from Locked and Goated, and it gives it over with a really good first 2 picks here for Trick Babushka. I like it.
And I like the Xbalanque, though, locked in from Locked and Goated. We've seen kind of the rise of Xball, I think, over the last couple of weeks, especially, in that hunter role, of course, maybe a time or 2 in that middle lane. But teams are really starting to pick up on what he brings and that late game potential that Xbalanque has, and teams are really starting to enjoy picking him up as their hunter.
And I don't think a lot of teams are enjoying playing against Xbalanque necessarily. That ultimate's still completely game-changing in these team fights. You can use it early to get assists. I love Xbalanque in the meta right now. I think it's a strong pick in the top 3. Alongside Xing Chen, you got to like what Locked and Goated have so far in their top 3. I think they've come away with a very, very strong top half of the draft.
A lot of it, I think, for Trick Babushka is going to be mitigating that Camazotz and the X-Ball as well. But we have seen a Camazotz just off the leash and is near unstoppable, much less a Camazotz that just remains even. You brought up Chernobog. He is locked in here for Trick Babushka, and that likely will be a long lane Chernobog. Though we have seen some swaps in that. We saw Kukulkan in the long lane and then a Hunter in the mid lane, so I can't say with complete confidence. But with a Thoth locked in there for Locked and Goated, a Kali will round out their draft as well.
I love Locked and Goated's draft from top to bottom. The one thing that they are lacking, though, is early game pressure. They really don't have a lot of early game gods or lanes where you feel like they're going to really, really pressure out the opposition. Camazotz should have a pretty good time over there in the short lane, but that's really the only lane that you're feeling great about your early game. I wonder if Cyno is going to spend some extra time over there. But if this game goes late, I don't really see a world where Locked and Goated lose it. They've got Xbalanque, Thoth, Kali. That is nasty as far as 3 late game hyper carries.
Yeah, I can't think of 3 better gods that I would like to have on my team as you move into the late game. Quig will be piloting that Xing Chen, and one of the things that he does so well is obnoxious in the jungle, or be obnoxious in the jungle, rather. And Ryan, I think that this is something we've started to see a little bit more often. Not the complete annoying, let's stick to the jungler all throughout the jungle in the early game, immediately to speed, rotate over to the Harpies and then the blue buff, but kind of just try to be annoying on that purple buff and see if I can take something away, plug a little damage, and then leave this long lane early.
This start is something that Locked and Goated has done basically every game so far this year, and I haven't seen a team really find a way to punish them effectively quite yet. They let Quig mess around on that left-hand side, harass the enemy support on purple. It also gives information to Locked and Goated on where the enemy support is. Cyno starts on his team's purple buff, and then goes to red, hogs red the majority of the time, and then goes back to speed, and that's exactly what he's done so far here. And if they end up taking his speed, then he just moves along and keeps kind of the train rolling on that left-hand side of the map, opens you up for left side of the map invades. It's a weird start, but one that has been very effective for Locked and Goated. They've done it very consistently, and I just don't think a team has really found a way to exploit it yet.
Well, this duo lane has just been under duress early on from Trick Babushka. Locked and Goated really been in control pressure-wise, so that it's obviously good to have that amount of pressure, but I think you also have to be mindful, and a lot of these guys are for Locked and Goated to play safe, ward up, because that opens you up for a gank, especially when you have a double assassin composition for Trick Babushka between a Naja and a Bastet. There's plenty of burst damage, and you'll get deleted pretty quickly if you open that door.
Yeah, it's a 4 physical comp for Trick Babushka, but it's a lot of damage inside that 4 physical comp. Sometimes when we see these, it's a couple warriors that kind of round out the last 2 physical gods, and that's really not the case here. So you've got so much damage, I don't think it's too much of an issue, and Kukulkan has enough magical damage to make you respect it and build some defense accordingly.
Quig is going to blink his way through, and he's got some damage onto ShadowChair, but not quite enough to get the kill. Mineral sashes forward, but Cyno has the jump out. Now that's on cooldown. He is low on mana as well. Don't think he has the stun for bigyuji, who gets the kill, turns around, first blood, and this one, the Trick Babushka.
Good patience by ShadowChair. That was clearly the, let's see if we can get the beads from him here without having to expend a whole lot. Quig blinks in, but it keeps Cyno local long enough for Trick Babushka to turn around and make the play onto him. Good play by Mineral and good patience by Yuji to wait out everything that Cyno had, waits until he can jump away, and then follows him quickly with the pounce.
And I think that's a double win for Trick Babushka. I mean, not only do you get the kill, but you shut down Cyno, one of those late game gods that you pointed out for Locked and Goated that is just scarier if you're able to find a first blood and really get rolling 3 minutes into this game. So a bit of a double win, I think, there from Trick Babushka. And we got a slight glance at the short lane there, and that's going to be a Camazotz versus an Osiris matchup. And in aggro, I think that's something we've seen a good bit, is if you're laning against the Camazotz, Osiris tends to be a pretty popular pick.
It's just a god that can actually hold his own in that matchup, at least for a little while. You also have access to 100% anti-heal with your ultimate, though most of the time Camazotz will just use his in response, but reducing the damage output that Camazotz does is really critical, and Osiris does that very well 2 ways. 1, through his passive in the damage mitigation, and 2, through reducing that power through his tether. Those 2 things together, most of the time Camazotz is just hard out trading. Between the tether and the damage mitigation, Osiris can do things like this, actually come out a little bit ahead on trades from time to time.
He's been able to hold his own and then some. Picked up an early hog, just maybe sensing some presence in his jungle. Didn't have to use it, brandonballs, so he will still have that next time around if need be. And one thing you sort of talked about, I think, for Trick Babushka is the presence of, maybe a lot of physical damage. It really is, though, for both sides, isn't it, if you look at it? I mean, between RelentlessOne, Cyno, Pegon, Quig, and Ẓtuart, Pegon's going to be doing most of the magical damage. RelentlessOne, though, might not be able to escape. Talk about a solo kill. brandonballs, he snags one onto RelentlessOne. Not used to seeing that on the Camazotz.
No, he made it look easy, too. A bad decision, though, by RelentlessOne to go back and try and clear the wave with that ultimate, but that was a cut and dry solo kill. So RelentlessOne gets hit by that Lord of the Afterlife, so that negates any healing that might come through for a little bit. Brandon positions himself well just between RelentlessOne and the tower, and Camazotz thought he could clear it better than he could with that ultimate and ends up swooping in a dangerous spot. And remember, lifesteal is, you're getting a percentage of the damage you're dealing. So reducing that damage by way of this damage mitigation and by way of the tether makes a huge difference up against the Camazotz, because he's just sustaining for less because he's dealing so much less to you in those moments. And Brandon's really leveraged his passive well. He's tethered RelentlessOne at the right moments. Osiris is a character that seems very, very simple on the surface and is really, really hard to squeeze every little last percentage point of power out of him. And Brandon clearly seems to be pretty comfortable on this god. He's doing very well on it.
Certainly not used to seeing just cut and dry solo kills in that short lane, but brandonballs has found one on that Osiris. And as much as, or as scary rather, as a Camazotz is once he gets online, or even before he's online, we have seen a time or two where an Osiris gets a few kills under his belt and just starts to run away with it. Might at least get an assist here, but can't forget that RelentlessOne has that get out of jail free card. Mineral sticks his head into the short lane, and RelentlessOne is able to pop that ult and get out alive.
But that's still 2 ults on the side of Locked and Goated for just 1 for a Trick Babushka. And Brandon has CDR between the blue buff and that Glad Shield to not really be too concerned.
And the gank is on in the mid lane. Cyno finds ShadowChair. So I said Kali at least didn't get a kill, but finally Cyno has one here. RelentlessOne, no escape this time, but not enough damage from Trick Babushka to snag the kill. We'll get some healing thanks to his kit and a potion there right towards the end. So obvious early game priority into that short lane to shut down this Camazotz as bigyuji jumps right back in onto Pegon, who has no mana. A little bit more damage is all Yuji needs, and he certainly has that. Kill number 3 to Trick Babushka.
Still had to use the beads because Pegon was threatening the root, but at the end of the day, that's certainly worth Yuji's time getting that kill in exchange for his beads. Yuji's been all over the place so far and really been putting out quite a bit of damage on this Bastet really early on, but needs to continue to keep the pressure on. As you highlighted, that Kali getting a kill for Cyno, it's not going to take long for him to get to that point where he feels like he's pretty much unstoppable.
Mineral has been all over the place this game, and is going to assist the rest of Trick Babushka in cutting down about 2/3 of Quig's health bar there. bigyuji still in rain. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel tosses back the Bastet. Ẓtuart, that's the freest kill of his life. He dashes backwards, last hits that Bastet, and is able to get a kill on the Xbalanque. So some of those late game carries for Locked and Goated starting to get some kills under their belt. Leaps exchanged. RelentlessOne, though, is here to peel for his jungler in the short lane. The action continues early and often here, Aggro, 8 minutes into this game.
All over the map as well. Great ult by Quig, knowing that beads were down for Yuji. Remember, we just highlighted Pegon pulled those out in the mid lane a little bit earlier on, so Ẓtuart's able to get the easiest kill of his life, as you highlighted, but because of that ultimate from Quig. And Cyno attempts that invade on the right-hand side. Brandon didn't get the blue buff around him, but I believe that Hand of the Gods was enough to confirm the buff. So golden experience worth more than the actual buff effect itself, especially on a god like Osiris, who does want to spam a lot, so it's valuable on him, but can get by without that blue buff sustain.
Oh, and as even as this game is, 300 gold in favor of Trick Babushka. I mean, the widest XP gap is really between Mineral and Quig, a 2-level lead. For that Naja, Quig could grab some experience for himself here, assisting in a gank. Over in the short lane, brandonballs taken low, certainly in range for a few swoops from RelentlessOne on the Camazotz. Down go the lights thanks to Ẓtuart. Finally, brandonballs goes down. But you get a sense of how long it's going to take to kill this Osiris. That's a 3-against-1 gank. Opens up a Gold Fury as well on the Trick Babushka side of this map as 4 members in the left side jungle. So yeah, you get a solo kill if you're Locked and Goated, but Gold Fury over to Trick Babushka.
It gets Cyno on his target, so he gets that extra bounty gold, so it is valuable. It's worth Cyno's time, but needing Quig there as well makes it a lot harder to defend that gold.
Yuji's down here one more time. Up, down he goes. Back out beneath the tier 1 tower. DayToRemeber, not enough range to finish off Ẓtuart there. Tense moments. And I think, well played by Ẓtuart, holding onto those beads, not getting locked down, and somehow escapes alive.
Boy, was that close. I think that pounce did land from Yuji. He just doesn't have a whole lot of points in it quite yet. Imagine he's maxed the 2 and is working on maxing his second ability, but I'm not sure if he's maxing pounce or that used to be Declaw, now it's the cat call or whatever it's called. So now it is that. Yeah, he's not putting points in the Pounce. Pounce does an awful lot of damage. Ensnaring Claw, that's what it's called now.
There we go.
It does do a lot of damage on that one, but it's scary to incentivize yourself to jump in oftentimes. Now, it's a lot better on Bastet, of course, because she can jump away, but not having that extra point in the one may have cost a kill to Yuji in that instance.
In aggro, I mean, this is maybe a bit more zoomed out, high level, but I don't think I'm overextending too far in thinking that, you know, both teams have somewhat similar compositions here, and, you know, they have a big chunk of physical damage on their team, some good objective secure between Pegon on the Thoth and ShadowChair on that Kukulkan. Or do you think the mindset maybe of both teams and what they're looking to do is pretty similar?
I think so. I mean, you've got assassins who will one-shot your backline in the late game. You've got frontliners that are really not CC heavy, but more damage heavy in both Camazotz and that Osiris. You've got big damage mages, CC setup supports. I think both these comps are very similar. I just think that Babushka has a little bit more late game prowess than that of Locked and Goaded have more late game prowess, I should say.
Could be a good whirlwind of Raijin Steel mineral forced to use the bead. Spirit of the Nine Winds flies itself in. Mineral low health. Pegon with the snipe from downtown. Goes down, though, to BrandonBalls, who pulls back one kill for Babushka. We do stand at a 1-for-1, but bigyuji gets another onto Cyno. So this Bastet is starting to swing, and she's starting to swing hard. Third kill on the board for the jungler of Babushka.
Really good use of the just peel by damage by Yuji on the back line there, as Yuji actually still has that ultimate, is going to go in looking for the tanks, but not dealing that much damage to them yet.
Tier 1 tower, though, will end up falling here in favor of Babushka. So not only do you get 2 kills, which is somewhat even with what Locked and Goaded were able to do, you get a Tier 1 tower now actually pull out, look towards this Pyromancer. That will be locked down as well. So what was about a 1k gold differential has moved to 2 and some change 12 minutes into this game. Certainly not insurmountable, but enough that Babushka have been able to build on a small lead and now built themselves into a great spot.
They are at a very good spot, but I still think that they have to be worried about the late game potential for Locked and Goaded. I know that they both have similar composition, but Bastet usually just dies in the backline very, very quickly. Kali has that destruction that prevents her from just dying when putting out all of her damage. I do want to see DayToRemeber continue to play well in this Chernobog, but maybe use that ultimate for a little bit more global pressure so far. Babushka is not really taking a whole lot of fights in that right side of the map by their will. It's been a lot of diving by Locked and Goaded, but this Chernobog ultimate can change games right around this moment where you've got a slight lead, start to go group up, go for invades, and use that global presence to your advantage. I know Ẓtuart has a global ultimate as well, but it's temporary. It doesn't teleport him to the fight like Chernobog does.
And we've drawn a lot of similarities as well, of course, between the two team compositions and more specifically maybe even the mid laners and what they look to do. But their build's very different here in this case. I mean, ShadowChair going Book of Thoth first, something that we sometimes see Thoth himself building towards, but he opted for the Chronos Pendant. We don't have to return to that point in just a second as ShadowChair caught out by Whirlwind of Raijin Steel, and Cyno will complete the kill on his target, so a little bit of extra benefit there. And a sneaky pick onto ShadowChair. But there are very different builds happening here in the mid lane.
Yeah, I mean, Kukulkan, you always expect to see that Book of Thoth because of how well it synergizes with the passive. Pegon, you've got a lot of options on Thoth. I thought with the Boots 1 and Lost Artifact start, we'd see Doomorb in that second slot just to give him as much power as he can. He's gone for the Cursed Orb, so Doomorb 2, and has left it there. He's going to go back and finish that later, or just outright sell it for a different item. Chronos Pendant Thoth feels good, but I don't know how necessary it really is. I feel like I would rather have seen that be Doomorb, but I think that Pegon's in a fine spot.
Well, Oni Fury will put Locked and Goaded in a fine spot if they started this one up. But Babushka in range, Locked and Goaded, thanks to Pegon, are able to secure with that final judgment. They might just take their present and go home here as Babushka look to turn around maybe a fight, but a small win, a smart call. They pull Locked and Goaded right back into this one. That 1,000 gold lead has become a little bit smaller. Suddenly, Cyno has found bigyuji, plenty of damage in that Kali. Back behind the red buff he goes as RelentlessOne jumps back in the fight. Suddenly Cyno not where he wants to be. Pops the ultimate. Look at that healing. He'll take that 7 days out of the week right back to the Oracles. Great play from Cyno to get his 4th kill.
Kali, by the way, I'm 1 HP, but you can't kill me because I've got my ultimate popped. And I'm just going to heal to full right away because I found my target Yuji jump being down. I do like the Yuji's actually gone for the shell and not the Aegis. It helped him there, but clearly not enough.
Cyno is looking for a tier 1 tower gank just a little bit too soon as he pulls tower aggro there, but he is able to jump out of range. Suddenly Ẓtuart a little bit worse for wear. He's locked down. He's cleaned up by ShadowChair, so the Kukulkan, a good rotation, is going to pull back 1 kill there for Trick Babushka. A tower does end up falling though, aggro, so not all is lost for Locked and Goated.
Still, you lose your ADC. He uses both relics in that engagement, so that's not a great start. Now Mineral gets to punish him easily with use of that ultimate. Probably doesn't even need ShadowChair at this point in the game. Just DayToRemeber's damage would be enough to one-shot him off that Windfire Wheels. Scary point now for Ẓtuart. He's got to be really well warded on that left side of the map. And I do want to give some credit. I know we saw a Kukulkan build earlier that I was not a fan of. I really, really like this build from ShadowChair so far. He got the Divine Ruin, which is critical up against the Camazotz, and it helps against Kali quite a bit to make sure she doesn't completely full heal after her ultimate. And now is building towards a Breastplate of Valor to make it harder for Cyno and RelentlessOne to dive him, and otherwise he's going to insta-die without being able to get relevant damage off onto any of these people. I feel like this is going to be a strong build overall here for ShadowChair.
Yeah. Well, and he's got a big role to play, right? I mean, you can kind of see the direction Trick Babushka are looking to go, where Mineral maybe just locks down someone with the Windfire Wheels, and then you send a Spirit of the Nine Winds right on through at the landing spot, depending on who Mineral has found. So the setup is certainly there, and it's kind of what we see with a lot of these skill shot heavy instant execute mages. Speaking of execute, Ẓtuart goes down beneath his tier 2 tower, so another small win there for Trick Babushka. But ShadowChair certainly has a big role to play in a lot of these fights, and he's got a big role to play even on objective secure, because you got someone who looks to do something similar in Pegon on the enemy team.
That's a good point. He's going to have his work cut out for him, but I love this execution. But Trick Babushka, they know Ẓtuart has no relics. Let's just use that Chernobog ultimate. We'll know exactly where everybody is. We know how many rotations are coming our way. We don't have to worry too much about unknown information.
Pegon jumped on in the back line, and the rest of Trick Babushka are here to fight as well. It's a bit of a split fight as RelentlessOne and Quig do battle with 3 members of Trick Babushka, and actually like their odds as the health bar is diminishing for Trick Babushka. RelentlessOne bailed out maybe a little bit there by a shell. It is DayToRemeber turns around the damage. bigyuji finds the kill. Tense moments there, and unfortunately RelentlessOne isn't able to clean that one up. So another kill over to Trick Babushka as the Bastet finds her 5th of the game.
Do you think RelentlessOne had fun there? The 1 HP Hunter, okay, I got him. He's right in front of me. And okay, 1 shell. Well, I'll auto attack through that one. That's fine. A couple autos his way, and then oh, okay, another shell. I'm done here. No fun at all for RelentlessOne there, but is some good news for Locked and Goated. Cyno was split pushing that whole time on the right-hand side. He got the tier 2 tower. So that's huge. That Cyno gets a ton of free farm. I know Yuji gets a kill on that left-hand side. They group up. They get the tier 1 tower. All that's good. There's very little that substitutes for multiple waves of free farm 18-plus minutes into the game, including some towers. Cyno is still in a great position to carry this game. Yeah. Look at his itemization. He's already finished that chin size, working towards either an Odysseus bow or an Ichabal or an Atalanta's bow. That's going to help him even more.
With that hastened katana, he is going to stick to you, and he won't be leaving anytime soon unless he somehow dies throughout the ultimate and the healing that may provide depending on the targeting. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the gold differential. I mean, the kill's kind of top and center in your screen, but it's gold in favor of Locked and Goated here. By all metrics, though, a somewhat even game. A 2-level lead for Cyno over bigyuji, who does actually have 1 kill over Cyno. It's just maybe been a little bit more effective, and that split push has given him a pretty big edge. Who is it, though, on Trick Babushka that you look to mirror what Cyno has done? I mean, bigyuji has 5 of the 8 kills.
Nobody mirrors Kali late game. It just doesn't happen. You have to find a way to either get Cyno out of position and play around it. You sacrifice your mid laner, your ADC, whoever he wants to kill, because he's going to kill him. You just got to play around it.
We'll talk about the lockdown. Mineral has locked down Cyno, and Spirit of the Nine wins, as well as DayToRemeber doing some damage is going to send Cyno back to base, but Quig has tossed one to the wayside as Mineral falls as well. Pegon in the mid lane under duress by brandonballs, but Ẓtuart is here to try to play Peel. Quig turns around as well, but Osiris plenty tanky enough and plenty healthy enough to stay alive. Used the thorns for a little bit of extra DR. brandonballs has found a kill onto the Hunter of Locked and Goaded, a 2-for-1 trade so far for Trick Babushka. RelentlessOne doing his best 1v4, unable to do so. That 2-for-1 becomes a 3-for-1, and Trick Babushka may be looking towards this Gold Fury.
And you can thank Mineral for that team fight, because he takes Cyno, the guy who's no one's going to be able to match later on in the game, but right now it's still a huge threat, immediately out of that team fight. Good timing by ShadowChair. You cannot be late on that ultimate, because otherwise Cyno gets his ult off, but Mineral finds a sick Naja ult onto the best target on the map, and ShadowChair's there to deliver on the follow-up. Great play so far from Trick Babushka. They've impressed so far with their with their play so far. Last week was not impressive. I think that they made a lot of mistakes last week. This time around, I'm liking what I'm seeing.
And that's sort of what we talked about after our first cast of the day, is that, you know, some of these teams, despite having a rough start to the phase, there's some ramp-up time to really get your team online and start to figure things out. So while you might have Locked and Goaded as the favorites coming into this one, Trick Babushka have impressed, and this game has gone back and forth, up and down. But that ticking time bomb, and it may have already exploded in Cyno, who has now completed his entire build except for the blessing in his boots that may get changed up. But the up and down of the graphs, I think, tell a pretty good story of this game. Fury split 2-for-1, 7-11 on the kills, a 2,000 gold lead, 4,000 XP is wide. But everyone is really in that 18 to 20 range, save the Guardians. So this one's still very close.
Very close. And that's where you want to be if you're Trick Babushka, in a way. But I don't know if they're far enough ahead at this point. I think it's still a little bit too close for comfort. I mean, that fight went well, but it's because Cyno insta-died. If he doesn't insta-die, then I don't think that fight goes nearly as well, and Trick Babushka have to recognize that and just make sure they're trying to do that exact same thing every time. Easy enough, right?
The dream scenario. Yeah, easy enough to lock down Cyno, and if he plays a touch more passively, might not catch the Mineral ultimate at the beginning of these fights. Fire Giant now starting to be poised around 23 minutes into this game, and both teams, again, as similar as they are, have similar secure. So, actually, Aggro, that's something I'm excited to see. If there's a big Fire Giant battle where both mid laners are involved, it's going to be an attempt at that last hit. That's going to be some fun to watch. But in the meantime, a tier 1 tower getting dropped down. Mineral has cut out Quig this time around, and the Spirit of the Nine wins will knock down the pin one final time. So Quig back to base for 40 seconds. A tier 1 tower in exchange for your Guardian's life, but Cyno has found a good target in brandonballs, who is rooted in place. Cyno thinking twice about the re-engage, and RelentlessOne is going to pop the ulti to get out alive. So it is, at the end of the day, a tier 1 tower in exchange for Quig.
Looks like DayToRemeber and Trick Babushka might want to keep going. You know, Days used that ultimate just to slow everybody down, but Cyno still here with ult and beads is scary, for sure. I don't think Trick Babushka want to push too hard.
They're at least pushing to this tier 2 tower. brandonballs is here, 5 members strong beneath this tier 2. RelentlessOne backs himself off. Ẓtuart has to disengage from the fight, but Cyno right back in, and he is doing plenty in that back line. Has to pop the ultimate, and bigyuji is going to clean that one up. Maybe a poorly sought out fight there from Locked and Goaded. You get some health bars nice and low. Two shells rather used at some point throughout all of these engagements, and the survivability stands strong for Trick Babushka.
Mineral has to use the beads, though, a bit overextended by him, but Cyno's been controlled so far in these team fights. The front line, RelentlessOne and Quig, cannot afford to keep dying, and that's because those are the guys that are going to be taking focus away from Cyno in these team fights. I know that at some point, Kali will get to the point where maybe there's nothing that you can do. You can have all 5 members looking at her, and she still might kill your whole team. But we aren't there yet. Cyno isn't 6 items, 3k potted up.
Right.
It's really, really tough to knock him down at that point. You can still handle him. We saw it right there where Cyno feels like he has to go in and just try and make something happen. You could feel the game starting to slip into Trick Babushka's favor. but it's because Quig and RelentlessOne have gone in and died too quickly. They need to be there in order to take some pressure, even if it's 1 or 2 members, off of Cyno so that he can be enabled to do his thing in this game.
I agree, and you get the sense just by positioning that this Fire Giant is likely to be the next bit of fireworks that we see in this game. It is a 5k gold lead for Trick Babushka and could grow further as Fire Giant has been started down about 1/3 of its health, but the lights go out thanks to Ẓtuart. Mineral takes RelentlessOne up to the sky, but maybe not the setup that ShadowChair is looking for. Mineral, he's not happy to be in that position at all as RelentlessOne swoops on through. Spirit of the Nine Winds from ShadowChair doesn't connect onto anyone. Quig sends one back. Pegon snags a kill onto brandonballs. A 3 for none. Locked and Goated find the fight they're looking for. DayToRemeber, he uses the actives, but that's an active to forget. Back to base you go. 4 members down. They might be looking towards fire.
That's a beautiful fight for Locked and Goated because of the front line that time. RelentlessOne stands in front of Mineral, makes sure that he's the only viable target for that Windfire Wheels. And even though it's been effective to just ult the tank and then have Kuku also hit the tank and insta-kill them, Quig takes ShadowChair out of that fight entirely. Make sure that he can't play in that team fight whatsoever. Cyno's at the same time chasing ShadowChair around, chasing DayToRemeber around. I love the way that front line played. And all the meanwhile, Ẓtuart and Pegon, they're chilling. They're in the back line, plenty of space between them and the nearest member of Trick Babushka. Locked and Goated right back in the driver's seat in this game.
And you get the sense almost that a lot of the fights that Trick Babushka has been winning have been on great setup from Mineral and then ShadowChair sending that ultimate through and executing the target that is locked down at that point. And that just didn't happen in that previous fight. So Locked and Goated take it convincingly, turn around, grab the Fire Giant. Right side Phoenix is now down. Still 2 tier 2 towers on the map between mid and that long lane. But the scales tip once again, aggro. It was a 4k gold lead for Trick Babushka, but I think that's kind of a tired thing to be talking about at this point because it's less gold and maybe time is the resource that we've needed to be looking at really for Locked and Goated because their team has started to come online into this late game. Trick Babushka's going to pull back a Primal Fury, but time was the main resource, and Locked and Goated, that's on their side.
And as long as Locked and Goated's front line are doing things like we saw in that last team fight, that's where it becomes really, really difficult to deal with this Locked and Goated draft. It is very contingent on their front line doing well, but as long as that front line's able to stay in front of one of the damage dealers, maybe 2, absorb some CC from the front line, keep their attention on, focus on the tanks, then between Cyno and Pegon and Ẓtuart, these 3 late game damage dealers, all 3 now hitting their stride in the late game, 5.5 items or 6 items for all 3 of them. I just don't think Trick Babushka have enough tankiness in order to withstand that. Mineral, while building very tanky, is still an assassin. So that's just kind of the way it's going to go for him. Even though he's going to build tanky, eventually he's going to die. Maybe if he builds a Lono's Mask, that would help, but then he loses a lot of damage output.
Well, you do have an okay Phoenix defense with ShadowChair on your team. Can send out of that Kukulkan damage right on through, but you might not get the chances. Ẓtuart has dropped the ultimate. Cyno taken low. Is he able to get the healing? Does, but not in time as ShadowChair turns around the damage. It's a 1-for-1 trade. Both junglers traded out. Spirit of the Nine Winds flies through and connects onto RelentlessOne. 3 members on the run for Locked and Goated. Trick Babushka found an opening. They will take that opening. A double kill from DayToRemeber stalls out that push, and you save your left side Phoenix.
Beautiful ultimate by ShadowChair. RelentlessOne losing 60% of his health instantly negates that siege right away. Just make sure that you can't get it. Just enough movement speed there by Yuji as well to make sure that Cyno doesn't get the heal before he ends up getting the kill. I don't know if it was an Odibo proc or maybe a Crusher proc off Lash. Something that ended up finally getting that kill onto Yuji. But even if Cyno gets that kill a fraction of a second earlier, there's Brawler's Beat Stick from Yuji. There's Divine Ruin there from Mineral. I don't know if brandonballs was in range for the Contagion, but there's plenty of anti-heal there to try and contain this Kali healing. It's going to be hard for Cyno to get these full health resets. Doesn't mean he can't insta-kill 2 or 3 of your backliners, but I don't know if he's going to be able to pentakill as easily because of the good itemization from Trick Babushka.
Looking at itemization, Titan's Bane replaces the Blessing from Cyno and is going to build right back into that Katana tree, drops off the boots and builds into that tier 2 Katana. Is that where you maybe look for him to go towards that 6th item?
little surprised that he sells the boots this early because he had Ninja Tabai, and so that extra attack speed was valuable, but he might be pretty close to the cap as is. This could be Stone Cutting Sword. He already has Hastened, which is the usual big one, so this would give him a little bit more penetration, which he has a little bit of. I mean, Titan's Bane usually just negates all their defense anyways as far as your build can go, so I don't think he needs a whole lot more pen. Stone Cutting would be fine, gets him a little bit tankier. Masamune lets him dive all the way into the back line and get some extra prots as well. You can kind of go whatever you want in this slot. Sometimes you see Bloodforge, but with the amount of anti-heal on their side, I can understand not wanting to go that necessary direction. Ichabod would give him the most damage output, but doesn't necessarily want to have to spend that many autos stacking it up, though with Kali that doesn't take too long. There were a couple options there for Cyno. To be realistic, it doesn't matter too much for Kali what that 6th item is. When you've got Titan's Bane, Chin Size, in Hasten Katana, Crusher as well out at his core, you're chilling. You can kind of do whatever you want with those last few items as long as they're providing some damage to you. You're going to kill people in the blink of an eye either way.
It's more of a good thing is rarely a bad thing, and Cyno had plenty of directions and plenty of good stats to build on there. It is Stone Cutting Sword that gets the nod to round out the 6 items.
I wonder if I would have gone Wing Blade, actually. Move speed's what he wants, so maybe that would have helped the most.
Spirit of the Nine Winds is going to start off this fight for Trick Babushka, but not the instant execute that they were hoping for. ShadowChair saved just for a moment by the shell from the rest of his team. Taken low, ShadowChair gets that final tick, but a double kill from Ẓtuart as he's rejoined this fight. Sends a couple back to base. Trick Babushka, 2 members left alive, 4 members strong for Locked and Goated. Could be looking towards a Fire Giant. They are low, and they don't have Cyno to help burn down the FG.
But Ẓtuart is going to do plenty of damage at this point. He can do your objective damage for you. It's really just a matter of if we can zone out Yuji and tank fire effectively at the same time. I mean, Mineral's going to get in there, and you can't really peel away a ring bounce. You just got to hope that Pegon's going to be able to secure it. With the amount of CDR he has, he's capped in the CDR department. He's going to have his ultimate up and ready before this Fire Giant's low at this point. So this should be a pretty good Fire Giant pull for Locked and Goated. I don't know that they can risk holding it up for Cyno, though. They'd like their Kali to get enhanced fire, but I don't know if that's an option.
Still a 4 versus 2. Cyno is 10 seconds away from respawning. Fire Giant, 10% HP. Maybe Trick Babushka, jump in. bigyuji with the steal. What a turnaround here. You have to get the kills if you're Locked and Goated, and they've at least gotten 1. The jump in, the jump out, the FG over to Trick Babushka.
No, Pegon too early on that ultimate. It didn't end up getting that final blow in order to secure that Fire Giant. Yuji leaps in and steals it with that pounce damage. It's just simple math, Dave. You got to know how much damage you're going to do and how much damage the Fire Giant is going to take in that moment. And Pegon drops the ball on the secure. That's a pretty simple one. You don't have to worry too much about zoning Yuji there. I don't think that's a zone problem. You just got to trust that Pegon's going to land that ultimate and secure.
It's not going to dissuade Locked and Goated, though, from attempting this right side Phoenix Siege, and Pegon is going to send another final judgment right on through. Cyno will complete the 4v1 split and move down to the mid lane. So a couple ultimates down, or only a couple up, rather, for Locked and Goated here. It looks like they're going to think twice about sieging this right side Phoenix as bigyuji is back on the respawn. It's been quite the day for objective secures and you and I casting, huh, Agro?
Yeah, we're kind of cursing them, huh? I mean, it should be some pretty easy ones, too. These are layups, Dave. These are breakaway layups that we're missing at this point. But
sometimes those are the hardest ones.
Sometimes those are the hardest ones. They come in a little hot. You can't decide if you want to put it off the backboard or not. They're tough.
Well, here's another fight, and up to the sky goes 1, and the Spirit of the Nine Winds flies on through. Cyno has found an opening kill in this fight and is able to jump over the wall, but brandonballs right on his tail. Trades that one out. Still a 1-for-1 trade, and Pegon sends the ultimate right on through. Only bigyuji has the Bastet ultimate for the remainder of this fight, and he rejoins Ẓtuart. See you later. 3 members on the back pedal for Locked and Goated. Trick Babushka. They're going to stun one more. A double kill for bigyuji. 4 members. They're going to barrel down the mid lane.
That's beautiful. That is a beautiful fight by Trick Babushka. Just a little bit too aggressive there by Locked and Goated. Got to remember that there are members of this team that had enhanced fire. It might only be mineral, but adding that extra damage and sustain to the support ends up mattering when he's playing that Naja, and that might be game.
Titans started up, 2 members back on defense. You do have Pegon and Quig, so there's going to be plenty of damage to turn around, but suddenly Quig might be a non-factor as DayToRemeber snags the kill. Titan, half health. You only have a Thoth. 3-4 members of Trick Babushka look to the Titan, and they'll take game number 1.
So, I mean, that's a great turnaround from them, because I really thought that, I know that they were in the lead, then locked and goaded, they get that Fire Giant, they feel like they're going to be in control, then you end up losing a Fire Giant because of that Bastet steal. Great play by Locked and Goaded, or by Trick Babushka, I should say. I gotta give credit to ShadowChair. I think he's had a rough first few weeks in that mid lane. I thought he played very, very well today on that Kukulkan. That last ultimate by Gold Fury, I say it a lot. As a mid laner, if they want to kill you, they're going to kill you. It's not a matter of how can I survive. It's a matter of how much damage can you get out on the right targets to try and make sure the fight goes your team's way anyways. And he forces Cyno's ultimate really early on in that engagement, makes it so it's very easy for Brandon to clean him up with the Lord of the Afterlife over Red Buff Wall. Well played by ShadowChair and the rest of Trick Babushka. They earned a big victory. A lot of credit goes to Yuji as well, man. 9 kills for him, and the big play of the game, stealing that enhanced fire.
I agree, and that was a massive turning point. And you felt like all of the presence really was for Locked and Goaded, and then the Fire Giant gets stolen away. And if you're Locked and Goaded, you pull back a kill, but that's all you hang your hat on there, and then you end up losing the game just a few minutes later. I think aggro, this is one of those rare few moments where I've seen a Camazotz, I mean, I don't want to call him a non-factor, but didn't have as big of impacts as we're used to Camazotz as having.
Agreed. Brandon, without a doubt, had the bigger impact on the Osiris, and that goes to show that you can't just play off the tier list, so to speak. You got to go by what you and your teammates actually excel at. I feel like RelentlessOne usually does pretty well in the Camazotz, but did not do so here today. And that affects picks and bans going forward. Now, if you're Trick Babushka, you think, okay, maybe we can let Camazotz through. If you're unlocked and goaded, do we now have to ban Camazotz, even if we were in the first pick slot in a typical power position to try and get that pick? Do we lose confidence in that selection for RelentlessOne? It puts you in a tough spot. I don't know what they're going to do.
I think Trick Babushka, they'll feel just fine with how that one went, especially in a matchup where there were so many similarities for what both teams were looking to do. And I mean, we don't really have underdogs in this kind of middle of the table matchup, but I mean, you could argue coming in hot after a win, Locked and Goaded, maybe the favorites in this one. So I think that's a momentum swing, not only from game number 1, but you look towards game number 2. Trick Babushka are going to be feeling good, especially when I say that you're kind of under the duress of Cyno and the time bomb that Kali brings. The fact that despite going into the late game, the back and forth, Trick Babushka, they take the win under the duress of one of the best late game gods.
And now it's going to be up to Locked and Goaded. Do they want to go a little bit crazier? Because we saw them play Hades jungle earlier, did very, very well with it. This was a much more traditional composition, and it didn't execute particularly well. I think that they struggled in finding those right targets for Cyno in team fights. I highlighted how Quig and RelentlessOne needed to frontline a little bit better at times. They had good team fights overall, but a couple that didn't go their way. And when the other enemy team's playing as well as Trick Babushka did, you can't give them that many opportunities. You're going to lose.
A teeter-totter of a game number 1 ends up getting locked up by Trick Babushka. A nice enhanced Fire Giant steal by bigyuji helps seal this one up. That's only game 1, though. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll see if Trick Babushka can take the set. I told you it'd be quick, and back we are for game number 2 in this best of 3. Set number 4. That's a lot of numbers, but we are back with Trick Babushka and Locked and Goaded. And after a game that it looked like Trick Babushka might not win, and then it looked like they might win, and then they might not win, so on and so forth. And then the straw that broke the camel's back, aggro, I think, was that big enhanced Fire Giant steal. And we talked a little bit about picks and ban. Is there anything to change if you're Locked and Goaded? I mean, it's such a gray area question. But I don't think they had a bad draft. Just some slip-ups down the road, minor execution mistakes maybe made the big difference.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I still think the Camazotz is one that now you're in second pick, or you're in first pick still. Maybe you have to ban that yourself. Maybe you don't end up picking that for RelentlessOne, because I don't think he was particularly effective on that selection. I think maybe you were looking a little bit more early game in 1 or 2 of your lanes, because they did kind of agree to just be chilling for a little bit. Didn't have a whole lot of pressure on that map, and both teams were kind of okay with that because both teams had solid late games. But maybe if you're locked and goated, you try and just get the ball rolling earlier and try and run away with the game before Trick Babushka have a chance to get their feet set.
And we were curious if that would result in a Camazotz ban, and the answer is no, as Hunbots and Hebo, as well as Odin, both take a back seat. Locked and goated didn't see it as an issue, I think for good reason. I mean, one bad performance from a Camazotz shouldn't be enough to dissuade you from picking him at this point. He is still strong, just needs the right opportunity, but there still is an Osiris on the table for Trick Babushka, a god that had a lot of luck, and not necessarily luck, but favor, maybe is the better word, up against that Camazotz.
Very surprised at this Hebo ban still. I mean, if you wanna leave open Camazotz still and still pick up that pick, I think that's totally fine. But I would have banned Kukulkan instead of that Hebo. As I said, ShadowChair has had a bit of a tough go of it for the first few weeks, and this is the best. I think that's his best game of the split so far. I don't know if you just give the hot hand the exact same thing that just looked really good last time around. I'm a little bit surprised by that option. Not so much the Camazotz first pick. I agree with what you're saying. One bad pick does not mean we have to change our whole strategy necessarily, but Kukulkan for ShadowChair again is surprising.
Yeah, give him the old run back and give Osiris the run back as well against that Camazotz. And just to remind, I mean, that was a solo kill. We so rarely see those in that short lane, and brandonballs was able to pull one over the Camazotz for locked and goated. And while the Osiris wasn't the crux of everything that Tricked and Goated were doing, was powerful and tanky and sustaining enough to be ever present in those fights. So I like locked and goated going back to something they found success with, especially in mitigating one of the most powerful gods in the game. In very similar bans, if not the exact same, for Trick Babushka. With Discordia banned out, they're going to try to limit maybe what locked and goated can pick in that mid lane.
But no Bastet ban for locked and goated. They're a little bit worried about Naja switching over into the jungle. And Trick Babushka might just hard run it back here. Unless locked and goated pick Bastet themselves, which could be okay. Dives Kukulkan well enough. Not great against Chernobog because the pets lose him once he goes in the wall. Dot damage won't affect him either there. Feel like Bastet isn't exactly what locked and goated necessarily want. Instead, they're going towards the Hades, which is a volatile pick up against Kukulkan, because you lock yourself in place during that ultimate, of course. So you're guaranteed to eat Tornado. You're guaranteed to eat Spirit of the Nine Winds, and you get a ton of prots. But you still end up dying a lot of the time. I think this is risky. I love this Awilix pick, last pick for UG. How many jumps on the other side? 4 jumps. You've got a knock up from Kukulkan ult and Xing 2 and ult. I love this Awilix pick. I think Trick Babushka might 2-0 the set.
Oh, aggro like Trick Babushka as we move towards game number 2. Locked and goated have drafted themselves some more interesting picks that we've maybe seen as tradition from them. I was about to say, I'm ready for this Hades run back in the jungle, and Cyno's going to give it another go.
Hey, why not? I mean, it won them last game, so you can expect to have a really good performance last set, I should say. It did a good job there. Cyno loves his selection. I'm a Hades apologist. I know everyone else hates Hades on the planet, but I think the character is okay. Not the best, but I think he's good. No character with a 2-second fear can ever be bad. That's what I'm saying, on a regular ability. That's nuts. Just got to pick your spots. I just don't know if this is the spot for Hades necessarily.
I think that's entirely fair enough, but Cyno was able to forge that Hades into victory in just our previous set. And to avoid going out 2-0, he'll have to do the same here. That means, of course, that Pegon will be on that Ullr in the mid lane, and Ẓtuart on the Hachiman over in that long lane. How do you like that matchup between an Ullr up against ShadowChair on that Kukulkan? I mean, as far as standard goes, I mean, Hunter against a long-range sort of pokey mage, it's maybe what you'd expect.
Yeah, it's not easy to stand and fight up against Ullr no matter what mage you are, but Kukulkan does it better than most just because he can toss the whirlwind on the wave and walk away. You don't have to walk up to the wave really at all. You don't have to stick around afterwards. You spend minimal time actually in the face of the wave, which is where Ullr wants you, is right in front of the wave so that he can just jump on you and destroy you with his abilities. can certainly still go Ullr's way. Ullr's the skill check god. If you're landing everything, you're going to end up doing just fine. But I'd expect ShadowChair to play this one nice and slow.
Well, Aggro, this is maybe a more micro question, but I just sort of noticed Quig was trying to invade and maybe successfully invaded over on that speed side of the jungle, and that forced a Mineral to actually, or maybe forced or accidentally, maybe not accidentally, Mineral grabbed the speed buff for Trick Babushka. Do you think that's a calculated decision or maybe it's accidental? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Yuji mirrored the start that Lox and Godot are doing and actually started on this side of the map. I think that on the left side, I should say. I think Mineral started alone on speed and ended up using Hand of the Gods to secure it, just to put it on cooldown so that you're not wasting farm in that little bit. Because the longer a jungle camp sits up, the more wasted gold you really have. You want to put that on cooldown as soon as you can. But yes, it is. I believe it is calculated to just give that speed buff over to Mineral to make sure that you're not leaving that farm for nobody.
Well, it is back off of respawn now, so bigyuji will be able to cycle back and snag the speed buff. Quite early game so far, I guess up to this point it's sort of what we've expected. It's been a lot quieter. I remember back in the qualifying weeks, we were seeing 4 or 5 kills on the board 5 minutes into this, but we're starting to really see these teams figure out sort of how they want these early games to go and maybe slow down the pace and play a little bit more calculated. But there was so much action, and maybe some action going to spring out here in this short lane. It's where we saw a lot of the kills spring out from RelentlessOne, overextended with no health, with no mana. That's the freest first blood of bigyuji's career. Into the dirt, another death for this Camazotz, and that is the opposite of how you wanted this game to start.
Not ideal. It's right as blue buff is spawning, but luckily for RelentlessOne, Cyno's in the right spot. He's on the right side, so it's not going to be invaded by Trick Babushka. But RelentlessOne has struggled so far, man. This is RelentlessOne has been around the scene for quite some time. You might know him better as Russian Poppy. He's always been a player right around this level that can do a lot of really good things, but just feel like the consistency's always been a bit of a problem, and it's plagued him so far today. And part of that has been because of dedicated attention by Yuji, and he got ganked by Mineral last game. The support at level 5, that's not often, but you see that. But still feel like could be doing better than this. This has been a disappointing performance for him today for sure. So far.
bigyuji had a large impact on game number 1, and now with the first blood under the belt of that Awilix, so you were happy with. You were excited to see that Awilix picked up 10th overall. And when an early kill goes onto your jungler, it's going to open the door to a lot of impact in a lot of different lanes. Cyno has to drop down into the ultimate, and Quig will do the same to leap his way out of there. Mineral taken down. Pegon turns back a kill. The Ullr has found a nice flank here in the jungle. bigyuji low, but has the speed buff maybe to outrange some of the auto attacks from Pegon. Axe not there. bigyuji jumps away, and a 1 for none over to Locked and Goated. But the fight still could rage on. That's a stun down onto ShadowChair. The leap from Quig in range, but the beads used, and that Kukulkan will escape alive.
Quig making an impact despite only being level 3 so far on this Bacchus. Mineral level 5 had the big advantage. He uses his ultimate and throws Cyno, or nearly throws Cyno, forces Cyno's beads. Cyno uses beads and ult to keep Mineral in place. A good ultimate by Cyno, but ShadowChair just had his eyes on the wrong target right there with his ultimate. That was a great ult by Yuji to pull Quig back in, but I don't know, it looks like Quig actually did use beads. Maybe he heeds that gravity surge and reposition from where ShadowChair thought, but it looked to me like ShadowChair aimed the ult at Cyno instead of at the level 3 Bacchus.
The fighting will continue over by this blue buff as brandonballs taken down to about half health, but Trick Babushka there in range, and bigyuji with already a kill under his belt is going to add a second. RelentlessOne backs off towards his lane, and I think that's smart. Plenty of damage from Trick Babushka to turn around. Cyno will send out just a little bit of fear there, but the blue buff is going to get secured by Trick Babushka. A slight overextension, and this Awilix has a couple of kills.
And that's not what you want to see when the Awilix goes so well against your composition. And I love this. Blink in from Mineral forces Cyno's ult.
He hasn't found much value for just yet, and a nice double whirlwind of Rage and Steel sends Cyno backwards, who's able to dash his way out. bigyuji right in range to snag the 3rd kill of the game. Spirit of the Nine wins from ShadowChair, attempting to peel for his jungler, and while it didn't do much, it did enough. Trick Babushka escape with all 5 members and another kill onto their jungle.
Perfect. But play by Mineral right there. Blinks in, doesn't use his ultimate early. Cyno, he knows Cyno doesn't have a choice. I'm going to have to use this right away. And then it just picks him up at the perfect timing, tosses him back. Good chase down here by Pegon, but now DayToRemeber is going to try and make him pay. Gone.
Boo,
You
first
like
of all, but no, I didn't.
Come on.
No, I did. Who am I kidding? That was great. Mineral.
Yeah, come on. That's your humor right there, Dave.
No, I am moving on from this as immediately as I can, because any more airtime on that is more than it deserves, maybe. No, you're right. That was absolutely incredible. Mineral, he's assisted in 2 of the 3 kills, but has also been both of the deaths that Locked and Goated have been able to lock down. And it's a battle now, at least up to this point, and obviously it's a little more intricate than that, but Pegon with the 2 kills, most of the gold and extra experience under his belt, and bigyuji with 3 kills. So I mean, it's a battle seemingly between this Awilix and this Ullr, who's going to have the impact on these fights.
And I feel like Awilix just scales a little bit better into the late game. I know she's usually thought of, I kind of went on this rant earlier today, right? That she's thought of as this early game destroyer that falls off really hard late game. I don't think Awilix really falls off that hard. She just changes. She just does different things come late game. She becomes a great 1v1er, a great split pusher. Awilix loses power whenever she's being ran at, because she wants people to run away from her, because then she's got more movement speed than you, your back is turned so she can 3, you're caught without being able to use your jump. That's where she's at her best. When you're running at her, she loses access to a lot of those offensive tools, and that's just really the big keys that stay ahead.
How many times have we seen this aggro where Mineral just kind of walks at Cyno, who burns the Hades ultimate and doesn't find anything for it? As if you had to guess, brandonballs another solo kill onto RelentlessOne, so the struggle continues for that Camazotz. We talked so much about what bigyuji is going to look to do in these fights, and I feel like we haven't seen what Cyno's wanting to do in these fights, because he's had to be defensive and getting engaged upon over and over and over again.
And that's what supports want to do. They want to make you play the game their way, not the way that you want. They're there to throw a wrench in everything that you're game planning. And Quig has really been unable to do that because he's been so far behind in XP all game. He's finally starting to catch up, but it's still kind of far.
Cyno could finally get involved. DayToRemeber into the wall. Cyno does get involved to the tune of 1 kill, so what has been a rough early game for the Hades. Only 1 death on the board, so rough may be an overstatement, but finally finds a gank. And I was curious, because it's obviously not something you see all that often, kind of how the Hades ganks look, and I guess you just kind of walk up and fear the enemy.
That's right, and they're feared for a long period of time, and then you've still got your jump in order to chase it out. Cyno has been a long Hades proponent, so obviously I'm a fan, but it's weird to see it in the jungle. I wouldn't advise it for sure, but Cyno's kind of been the master of odd junglers throughout his career, as we talked about at the very beginning of this set. And despite the counter pick here from Yuji, and Yuji's certainly ahead, I feel like Cyno still has an option or still has the opportunity to make a big impact on this game.
What is tough, though, right? I mean, as a Hades, depending on how ahead or behind your team is, sometimes it seems like the enemy team will just say, okay, he's in his ult, he's not doing that much damage to us, just kill him because he's sitting there, right? I mean, it's always a threat I think you face if you're Cyno.
Yeah, it's the big problem is that I can try and all in, and then if my team is behind, then I'm not able to get enough damage from them. I mean, Hades is not going to 100-0 you unless he's really, really far ahead, which is clearly not the case. So that's not happening. You need help from the team, and there isn't a whole lot of AoE to really assist with that right now. You're looking for Quig's ult to really help you out. Quig's a little bit behind. You got Ẓtuart's ultimate. That's a little bit of damage, but it's not that much. I mean, Cyno's got to do the bulk of the heavy lifting on the damage output, and that's not ideal when you're down to the enemy Awilix.
And he has to use his dash here as well as the beads, so that'll be low. He uses the ultimate, but that's a last-ditch effort, and DayToRemeber will make him pay. Cyno back to base for the 2nd time this game. Beads, ultimate, not enough to save the life of that Hades. Maybe it's easier like he's almost like a reverse Hoonbats. Instead of the big utility ultimate that's going to send a bunch of people running away, he's going to try to pull you in and help out the rest of your team in finding some kills.
Definitely, that's the design, and that's what we've seen from Hades historically, is that he's really a solo laner that wants to bring that ultimate as utility, to come in towards the back end after everyone's used their escapes. Just has not been the case, as Pegon can't play the game in the mid lane, blink in for Mineral. Ensured that. That was a little bit of a trampoline act in the mid lane. Pegon knocked up a bunch.
I am concerned, though, a bit about this solo lane and how this one might spiral out of control. RelentlessOne 2 levels down, 2 deaths. brandonballs at 1-0-2. This Osiris is going to hurt plenty. All depends on how RelentlessOne maybe makes his way back into this game. Gold Fury started up, but peeled off, and DayToRemeber sends Cyno to the dirt one more time for the 3rd time total this game. That might be the free Gold Fury over to Trick Babushka. Nobody from Locked In Goated in range. Nobody is going to take that chance, and that's a kill and a Gold Fury over to the red side.
This has just been good smite so far from Trick Babushka. I think they came away with a really, really strong draft, and then they've come onto the battlefield and really executed nicely. Yuji's been in the right spots. Mineral's had a great day so far in this matchup. And how about Brandon, who's really just crushing RelentlessOne so far today. By the way, I'm not sure if everyone's aware. I know I mentioned that RelentlessOne might be better known as Russian Poppy. Brandon might be better known as Bruh, who's been around this scene for a little bit. And, well, Bruh's right when you're watching the performance so far in the solo lane. It's been a rough one for RelentlessOne.
Maybe a day to forget for him, and then maybe a day to remember, as you would say, for Mineral. See, I can do it too, Aggro. I'm just as good as you are, I think, on the puns. Maybe even one up. No, that one was worse. Much worse. But Trick Babushka.
You want the smoke save? Is that really what you're looking for?
I don't. That's why I'm moving on as quickly as I can, because I am nervous.
Yes.
Trick Babushka are confident as you are in your pun game, though, as they have about a 2,500 gold lead, 13 and some change minutes into this one. And I don't know, Aggro. I mean, things could become a little bit worse here, as DayToRemeber is dove on, but will use his beads, has an Aegis as well, that won't be used. There's some good utility from Cyno. Lock down the Chernobog, grab yourself a kill. But you've used a lot, and the counter gank could be here from Trick Babushka. Mineral into the whirlwind of Raijin Steel, sends Ẓtuart right back towards ShadowChair, but Pegon in one more time. 2 members of Trick Babushka back beneath that tier 1 tower, and maybe that's where this one ends. Blink right back in from Mineral, providing just some body blocking. Long-range shot, no good, rather, from Ẓtuart. Trick Babushka, in the meantime, have taken themselves a Pyromancer, so yeah, Locked In Goated get a kill, but you lose the Pyro.
That was a great play by Quig to get that whole thing started. He actually caught DayToRemeber's dash with that belly flop and forced him to use the beads early because of the belch. That means it's easy cleanup for Cyno with that ultimate, and probably shouldn't have burned the Aegis there for DayToRemeber. Takes a couple ults for Locked In Goated, but getting any sort of thing rolling for Cyno is really ideal because he's struggled so far.
Well, I guess that's then the next question, and at least in game number 1, Cyno was on the Kali. They're going to go right back to DayToRemeber, who has no actives, and right back in goes Cyno. Why not return gank when DayToRemeber on the Chernobog has no beads and has no Aegis? So smart play there from Cyno, especially if you're able to get Ẓtuart out alive as well. Mineral will have something to say about that. Doesn't have the whirlwind of Rage and Steel, but Ẓtuart can mount up and get himself out. So another solo kill on to DayToRemeber, who's had a tough string of events here over the last couple of minutes or so.
I mean, that's a classic maneuver for the jungler. We kill you, we know you use both your relics. Why not just wait there? It's not like Cyno was doing nothing either. They push a wave, they get the purple buff invade, and it just so happens that's probably around the time that Chernobog's going to be waltzing back to lane. And that's the second time in a row that DayToRemeber has gotten his dash caught by a CC. Bit unfortunate for him. Also, just good timing by Locked In Goated. Looks like Quig might be trying to put this Chernobog even further behind and set Ẓtuart up as a success story for this game.
Ẓtuart does have a 1-level lead over DayToRemeber. No kills on the board just yet. And very similar itemization for both hunters. And I think that's a topic that has gone, around, back and forth, up and down over these first few weeks of the SCC. Both opting for that Blood Forged into the Executioners. Kind of foregoing the crit build, as we've seen pretty prevalent at least for the first couple of items.
I think people have started to realize that spectral armor is just so strong that it's not worth building crit, because as soon as you see a spectral on the other side, that person is just off the table as far as a killable option for you.
Right.
So it makes sense to me that we're not seeing a whole lot of crit as RelentlessOne gets his ult forced off a nice gravity surge by Yuji. I think that, again, this is on the older patch. The new patch is going to be next week, so for these players that we're going to be playing on. So we'll see then, whenever Devourer's Gauntlets have gotten their buff, what we're going to see there. We'll see. I still think that Devo gloves have a place with that extra sustain. I think that it could be the new go-to, but Bloodforge still has a huge power spike right away that you don't have to stack at all. Devo's,
right.
If you're going to buy it, it's going to be because you feel like you need that extra sustain.
We're going to take a quick pause before jumping back into this one. Aggro, it's like a, 1,500 gold lead here for Trick Babushka, but just it's sort of that intangible vibe of the game. All of the presence, I feel like, has really been on Trick Babushka's side of the map. They have, maybe some lower towers, save the solo lane tower for Locked and Goated, both very low. But over the last few minutes, it's felt like Locked and Goated and mainly Cyno have been driving the direction that this game is going, despite a slight gold discrepancy.
I agree. I mean, I feel like this should have, Trick Babushka had all this momentum. They get Cyno, they get a Gold Fury. They've done very well, but now in the interim, Cyno's farmed up. He's pretty close in effectiveness to Yuji. This next team fight is maybe a weighted coin in Trick Babushka's favor, but it's not a very good weighted coin. Like, they bought it thinking it was going to be way better. All the reviews were really good, but it only lands their way guaranteed like 60% of the time, 55% of the time. Not nearly as consistent as you would like. So it's still certainly an option for it to come up tails and have Locked and Goated steal his team fight away.
Well, Quig has found himself right in between 4 or 5 members of Trick Babushka, and this could be the opening pick that they look for. Quig not able to use the blink. He is locked into this fight. Not enough damage just yet, but DayToRemeber changes that one. Quig a little bit out of position there. Will get chopped down, and that might open the door to this Fury being taken by Trick Babushka. Some other objectives on the map, though, for Locked and Goated to look towards. They're going to send a few over towards that short lane, but Primal Fury locked down for Trick Babushka.
That one's free after Quig ends up taking a spill that just shouldn't really be a thing. I mean, he's got 2 forms of CC immunity here. He bought the Magi's, and he has the Purification Beads. Very surprised that he ends up investing this much and still ends up getting picked, but it's the level discrepancy. He's just not very tanky because of base stats or lack thereof. Magi's is good for the bubble. It gives you a little bit of HP and prot, but it's not nearly enough to actually make you feel tanky. Good identification by Trick Babushka that, hey, we can just kill this guy basically whenever we want, because he's just not tanky enough to stand tall for a long time.
And finally, that was maybe the momentum shift, however small it may be, for Trick Babushka to kind of get this game back under control. As we're about to crest 20 minutes in this one still. About a 1.6k gold lead for Trick Babushka. And, we talked a lot in game number 1 about time being a big resource for Locked and Goated, of course, because that Kali, you want to get her online. As even as this game is, and might become a little bit wider for Trick Babushka if they truly lock down this Pyromancer, and they are able to do so. You look at as time goes on, which team maybe feels more confident in their late game?
I don't really love either team's late game, to be honest with you. I think they're both pretty average. I think I have to give the nod to Trick Babushka, though I'm not super excited about it. I mean, they still have Awilix, Osiris. Those are 2 gods that don't do particularly well in the late game, but having a real traditional mage and that Chernobog there that becomes really, really difficult to deal with when split pushing, I think that it's tough to necessarily give it to Locked and Goated when they've got the Double Hunter. Double Hunter is good for objectives late game, but it's pretty easy to itemize against. Mineral can start working towards a Midgardian Male or anything like that, a Nemean Lion. I know those items aren't particularly strong right now, but just something that gives him a little bit of utility against these Double Hunters. Brandon could go towards a Witchblade if he so chooses. That's great on Osiris when you're dealing with Double Hunter. I feel like Trick Babushka should have the edge come late game.
They are going to prioritize some anti-heal as well. A few anti-heal or healing reduction items online for Trick Babushka. That's going to mitigate Cyno pretty heavily in what that Hades is going to look to do, especially building into the Bancroft's first overall. And maybe that makes you a little bit nervous here if you're Cyno and what you're hoping to do is move in and maybe get a big pull to set up a fight. You're not going to be able to heal quite as well.
And it's good against the Camazotz. RelentlessOne is going to have plenty of sustain.
Yeah, absolutely.
No lifesteal build for Pegon or Ẓtuart, but should they go for a later sort of Aussie for Pegon, Ẓtuart has a Blood Forge. That's the only lifesteal he'll probably be getting, but it's effective against that. I think that the anti-heal is a very strong pickup here for ShadowChair and for UG. And it's not like you're sacrificing that much DPS to go with those.
Right.
You're still doing relevant damage even with the anti-heal options.
Well, it's 22 minutes in, and Fury will be up in about another minute and 45 seconds. I think you have to be careful here if you're locked into Goated, or if you're Trick Babushka, really on either side. When the Fury and the Fire Giant are both up at the same time, there's always the threat of one or the other being taken away, but it's Fire Giant rather, that is under duress at the moment. Looks like Trick Babushka are privy to Locked and Goated being close to it. And maybe just a net advantage in Secure when you have a Kukulkan on your team. If you're locked in, or on the enemy team rather, you have to be careful starting it up if you're locked and goated. You can burn it with the double hunters, but there's a large threat of a steal if ShadowChair is still alive.
That's the check and see that Trick Babushka are paying attention. If they aren't, we can sneak away this Fire Giant and we're back in this thing. If they are, then we just back it up and we don't lose a whole lot besides our tier 1 and left, which was going to fall eventually anyways. You can't really afford to have Ẓtuart still pushing that left side at this point in the game because he'd be too far from Fire Giant, and DayToRemeber has his global ultimate to join the fight. So I think that's a totally fine attempt by Locked and Goated. I like where Quig's going, by the way. I'd assume this Kusari is going to head towards the Shoguns, which is always something that you want when you've got double hunter. Magical protection, which is great up against ShadowChair here. Going to give him some decent tankiness, which he really needs. And that attack speed aura is going to be really, really beneficial, even to RelentlessOne on the Camazotz, who does some of his damage in those team fights later on with those auto attacks.
And this one has really slowed down over the last few minutes. I remember when we previously checked in, bigyuji on 3 kills. It was Pegon who had a couple, and we were curious where those kills would start to spread. It's actually been pretty clear. DayToRemeber in the meantime has picked up 3 kills, but Cyno as well, thanks to repeated ganks on DayToRemeber, has gotten a couple of extra kills as well. With Oni Fury just starting, Trick Babushka will look to take advantage of some of that spread presence as RelentlessOne has to blink away. So a minute and 40 seconds on that timer. Could open things up here for an Oni Fury. Oracles are up. So outside of that, I'm not sure Locked and Goated will be aware. They are aware at least, but the specific positioning may be out of their control. Half health on the Oni Fury. Objective secure is certainly in Trick Babushka's favor. Mineral a bit overextended, gets taken solo, but some shielding gets him out alive. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel just to disengage. I could open the door for a Fury here from Locked and Goated, but the fight still could continue.
Still have to worry about that Kukulkan ultimate though, Dave. I mean, they forced Mineral back, and that's a win, but RelentlessOne lost his ultimate. He's really, really weak. He's going to have to make a choice. Does he want to try and stick around, or doesn't end up using that TP back? A good reset stops that ultimate from stealing it.
That was smart from Locked and Goated. Back off right when you see Spirit of the Nine Winds take to the skies. And now Trick Babushka don't have that for the ensuing fight. brandonballs has to use the Thorns, but will not save his life here. Ẓtuart has rejoined the fight, snags a kill onto the solo lane, and that's the first time Osiris has fallen this game. Trick Babushka, though, not dissuaded, still dancing around this Oni Fury. A couple low health members, bigyuji hanging around the side, and don't forget that's 4 kills on that Awilix. That's Oni Fury secured by Trick Babushka. A couple kills, dominoing back and forth afterwards with DayToRemeber under a bit of duress. Has to use his escape, but it's not far enough. A double kill suddenly from this Camazotz as he's come to life. RelentlessOne rejoins this fight to the tune of 2. And Mineral look to escape. The double dash will certainly help. It is a Fury lockdown from Trick Babushka, but I think a big swing there as Locked and Goated are able to pull back some kills.
Good CC immune ult there by Mineral to give himself that extra little bit of safety that he needs, because that axe was definitely landing from Pegon. So at the end of the day, 3 for 2. Locked and Goated do end up losing that Oni Fury though. But this is where I don't think Oni Fury is super impactful, because it should be pretty easy for Locked and Goated to spread the map right now and just clear out these minion waves and clear out the Oni waves. And then Oni Wave is really, or Oni Fury is really just objectively worse than something like a Primal or a Gold Fury that would have given you either a longer benefit in the Primal Fury or a more immediate benefit in the sense of that Gold Fury, because Trick Babushka just a little bit too weak to rejoin and actually make use of those pushing waves. But you can see the prowess that Yuji has. Even 25 minutes into this game, he one-shot Ẓtuart right there on Ẓtuart walking up. You got to keep track of exactly where this Awilix is at all times. And Yuji's not even going for the Heartseeker. I mean, he's still got a lot of power left if he wants to build that after he sells his boots. Looks like he's going for something a little bit more damage-oriented with autos.
That's an aggressive and maybe a ill-thought-out engagement from Cyno as he blinks into the backline but gets taken down by ShadowChair. Suddenly, this Hades no longer a factor as 5 members of Trick Babushka still alive, half health on this Tier 1 tower in the middle lane. 4 members of Locked and Goaded still in range to try to defend, with all 4 members still having their ultimates. Only brandonballs with his ultimate still alive, and maybe that's the advantage that Locked and Goaded need. They do find 1 kill to pull this one back in the backline. RelentlessOne swooping on through, but a shell provides some healing to DayToRemeber and Mineral. Ẓtuart has found the kill onto brandonballs. RelentlessOne turns his eyes elsewhere as Pegon shuts down the hunter for Trick Babushka, and they're looking towards this fire giant.
Man, clearly not a big deal if Cyno goes in a little into mode there in mid for a second, if the rest of the team's going to bounce back and have such a great fight afterwards. This double hunter is scaling better than I really gave it credit for. They're Pegon and Ẓtuart are peeling well for each other, but they got to secure this fire now.
Yuji did it last game. Oh wait, he did! No way! Around the backside, he takes it again! Oh no, disaster from Locked and Goaded. Big Yuji, 2 games in a row, take the fire giant away. Mineral might lose his life for it, but this is a mirror. That's a nice whirlwind of rage and steel. You wish there was some follow-up on that one. Big Yuji, the miracle worker, 2 games in a row, and fire giant taken away by Trick Babushka.
Bruh. Dude, I can't do it anymore, Dave.
Aggro, that's you and I, dude.
We're cursed. We are cursed. No team can secure an objective with us around. My goodness. I mean, that one is just, it's a good individual play by Yuji. Pegon Ullr has decent secure. You know, you 3-1 auto. They all kind of land all around the same time, but it's not mage level secure. That's a weakness of these double hunter compositions. That is tough. That's tough, man. I mean, that one's less egregious than the other ones we've seen so far today. That one's the most understandable, but I don't think it helps Locked and Goaded feel any better about their position. They lost last game because they didn't secure a fire giant.
Yep.
Didn't secure a fire giant again here. We'll see if it ends up being the difference maker. But Yuji again, he's 2 for 2 so far this set, isn't he? Going in and stealing fires.
Yeah. What would be nice is if it was one that Trick Babushka just started on their own, and then they could just take it and have it on more than just one member of their team. So I suppose if there is a silver lining to be found there for Locked and Goaded, it's that only Big Yuji has the fire giant buff. You still feel a sense of confidence maybe from Locked and Goaded as they knock down the long lane Tier 2 tower, so an open Phoenix in the long lane. But now how do you, actually it's an interesting kind of standpoint to look at. You have 1 member with the fire giant. Do you really play around that, or do you just sort of look at that as we've stolen it away and let's rethink on fire giant here in the next 3 minutes?
No, I think it's just okay, we didn't lose fire giant to the enemy team. Let's reset. Let's reset mentally. We're still in a good spot in this game. You can't really be like, okay, Yuji has extra power and sustain, so we're playing all around him in this next team fight. Yuji will feel a little bit stronger. That's all you really have to worry about. It's not something that you're basing your entire next initiation off of.
Well, not much would change in that case anyway, right? I mean, Big Yuji at 5-1 and 4 probably feels like he has extra power and presence and all of that in this game anyway. That's wild. I mean, between a Fury taken away and now 2 fire giants stolen, something about you and I casting together today is just objective Steel City. And Trick Babushka, one more time, the beneficiary. Locked and Goaded, though, as I sort of mentioned, not feeling dissuaded and not feeling disjointed maybe from being in control of this game. This could be a big fight that could turn the tables just a little bit. Primal Fury chunked down, pulled right back in, gets reset, so not secured by Locked and Goaded. They'll pull it right back out, still low enough health to take it away. so well danced around, and that's the first fury of the game over to Locked and Goated.
Yuji lost his Magi's there to some CC coming from Locked and Goated, and that's important. He still has his beads, so it's not the end of the world, but it is worth noting.
Nice blink through from Mineral, and a Spirit of the Nine wins to follow up. So big team fight ultimates down from Trick Babushka. Cyno only catches one, cancels the ultimate as Bigyuji tries to dash himself away. 5 kills, that could be a massive swing if you can get rid of the Trick Babushka jungler. Instead it's ShadowChair who has fallen the hands of RelentlessOne. DayToRemeber is able to dash himself backwards. RelentlessOne trying to weave some damage around Mineral, who's catching the brunt of it here from Locked and Goated. I think if Trick Babushka get out with only 1 death there, it's a win, and that's where we stand.
Lots of relics on cooldown, though, for Locked and Goated. I mean, that is a win for Trick Babushka to only lose ShadowChair, and frankly, ShadowChair has just not been impacted so far this game anyways. He's bottom of his team and player damage, well below Mineral even. So that's not too big of an issue. But you got to be careful if you're Locked and Goated. This feels like a good initiation, a good engagement. 5v4, but you've got no relics at all.
Tier 2 tower does end up getting taken. There was the threat of Bigyuji around the backline. 5 seconds remaining on that Fire Giant buff. Quig stunned out, taken down. Pegon turns around the kill. A 1-for-1 trade. But aggro, that's massive with Fire Giant in exactly a minute. Both Quig and Bigyuji will be back up. But for the next minute, I mean, maybe you trade out a Guardian for a 6-kill Awilix any day of the week.
Especially when it's, this important to kill Yuji before you end up going for an objective. That's a lesson that I'm sure Locked and Goated has learned by this point, because it has been rough for them to try and secure the objectives with him around. But I don't think that Locked and Goated is really going to get the shot to go for full fire before Yuji can rejoin. He's got Suku. He's going to be back in that fight pretty quickly off the respawn, so pretty inconsequential series of trades.
The gray screen respawn timers effectively mirroring the Fire Giant respawn. Maybe a small difference maker that Pyromancer has picked up, so Bigyuji and the rest of Trick Babushka will be able to rejoin just a little bit quicker, but slower and more methodical is sort of the vibe that we've felt from these two teams over the last 30 or so minutes. It has the feeling that, despite a 2,500 gold lead for Locked and Goated, everyone except for Mineral in this game at level 20, full item slots except for maybe some boots to get traded out. This one's about as even as you can get, and you weren't necessarily feeling one team over the other into the late game. This is a very even setup.
I mean, the full 5-on-5s looked like they favored Locked and Goated, though. I mean, Pegon and Ẓtuart have done very well, peeling for one another, using their damage as peel, and the little bit of CC they both have. Brandon struggled getting into the backline effectively. It's really just a matter of, can ShadowChair step it up and hit a big ult or survive long enough to get multiple rotations of his Whirlwind off or Zephyr, because he's just been ineffective so far. He's bottom of the player damage 34 minutes in. You're not winning a lot of games when your mid laner is bottom player damage 34 minutes in. So it's really up to ShadowChair to try and make sure that this composition for Locked and Goated doesn't have forever to burn through their front line, because you need that mage damage to actually be relevant.
Yeah, seems bad, feels bad, certainly not great for Trick Babushka. ShadowChair will look to turn some of that around. I mean, he is approaching full build and technically is there minus the boots, so the potential is that sky high for ShadowChair. Has been engaged upon a few times in this fight. Some good, maybe shallow, since it's on the Trick Babushka side of the map, ward coverage to really sense out Locked and Goated. Cyno is on a bit of a roundabout flank here and could find a Bigyuji in the backline, who has to use some mobility to get out of the onslaught that Cyno was sure to bring with him. Quig has found ShadowChair one more time. Spirit of the Nine wins will connect for maybe a scratch of damage, but a shell just to peel out for their mid laner. RelentlessOne has found the Kukulkan, and Ẓtuart finishes him off. Cyno pulls in a few and gets the kill onto Bigyuji. 2 members down low. Health bars, though, on Locked and Goated, so there's still a chance. DayToRemeber gets one, but a double kill from this Hades has put Locked and Goated right back in control.
Beautiful fight by Locked and Goated. They pinch Trick Babushka in a bad spot, and ShadowChair just takes too long to get out of danger. Way out of position, all alone on the right-hand side. Quig isolates him, RelentlessOne's on top of him. Cyno finds a massive Hades ult that does a ton of damage. And it's is able to really create a ton of space. This might just be game here, Dave.
Well, it's going to be middle lane Phoenix at least taken down. Mineral somehow escapes that one, and I speak just a little bit too soon as RelentlessOne has swooped his way in. Titan is under attack, locked and goaded, 4 members strong, only brandonballs left alive, half health on the Trick Babushka. Titan locked and goaded, they'll make no mistake. They'll take game number 2, and this set is going to a game 3.
Really good team fight there at the very end. Cyno still has those assassin instincts even when playing the mage. Loops around the back. RelentlessOne blinks in, takes a lot of attention. But it really feels like this team for Trick Babushka just gets a little bit too disjointed at times. ShadowChair's all the way on the right. The rest of the carries are on the left. Yuji's unable to make an effective play that team fight because relics were all up on the side of locked and goaded. And Pegon able to escape with just a sliver of HP is really relevant because they needed his damage there in order to end the Titan.
And I love the turnaround from RelentlessOne. He was 0-2-0 early on in this game, and despite not shooting up the damage charts, ending at 4-2-7, picks up 4 kills and 7 assists in a row down the stretch after starting 0-2. I think it's a big turnaround from that Camazotz. And Cyno as well. A rough start to this game, turns it around, helps locked and goaded over the finish line. But I think we'd be remiss, both of the hunters, both in the middle lane and in the long lane for locked and goaded, maybe the biggest difference makers here.
Completely agree. Ẓtuart and Pegon both had big performances late game. Ẓtuart, you expect, I mean, he's playing Hachiman. That's a pretty good hunter that scales all the way through the game. But Ullr is usually the early game dominator that then falls off pretty hard towards the late game. Pegon continued to be very effective from early on in the game all the way until the very end. But I feel like Cyno's Hades really made a huge impact in that last team fight. Quig eventually became a factor in this game despite really struggling early on. And it came together and it resulted in a locked and goaded victory, even though it was pretty hard fought.
And I still think, despite the hunters maybe being the dual MVPs of this one, I think you have to shine a spotlight, although Camazotz has had plenty of spotlight shined on him. That's why locked and goaded go back to the Camazotz. Despite an 0-2 start, getting to a point in that game where you can still stick on the back line and sustain yourself through all of the anti-heal that Trick Babushka had picked up, that's why locked and goaded, I think, are not dissuaded from picking him up first overall.
I agree. I think that's a great turnaround for RelentlessOne. That being said, I don't know that I'm picking him Camazotz in game 3. He's gotten soloed 3 times across 2 games.
That's
if
true.
I'm picking Camazotz, I'm coming with a plan against Osiris because clearly that matchup is not one that you're comfortable leaving RelentlessOne on the island for because Brandon has just dominated him all day.
You're playing with fire at that point if you're going to pick Camazotz into an Osiris one more time. Do you think that now it's Trick Babushka who need to take a mindset swap? Because this is another one where they were very much in this game up until the end and then some steals back and forth. Maybe shift the scales. Whose set is this to lose going into game 3 mentally?
I feel like locked and goaded are the better team and just have the better talent on their side. So I always side with that when it's who's set to lose necessarily. But Trick Babushka have shown some really good things. I think the set is fairly even, though. If it's the question of who should be favored going into game 3, I think I just got to give it to the team that has the better pedigree. Cyno's a world champ. I'm going to give it to locked and goaded.
We await with bated breath to see what team is able to take game number 3. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, game 3. The break was quick, but this set has been anything but. 2 games in, both of them pushing 35-plus minutes. And this one hangs on a knife edge. Aggro and I had a conversation just prior to break. Hard to determine who has the momentum in this one. Maybe you have to give it to the team that just won game number 2. But I think this is one where teams will really, or both these teams will really show us how they're feeling in the pick and ban phase. Whether they go back to Camazotz with an Osiris still on the board, locked and goaded, Trick Babushka. I think a lot of those questions will be answered in picks and bans.
Agreed. I think that's going to be the big question is can RelentlessOne be a factor pre-25 minutes, during the laning phase? Is he going to continue to get handled pretty easily over there by Brandon? Locked and goaded, still in that first pick slot. So Trick Babushka, having lost the last game, they would have the option on where they want to go as far as first or second pick. So a little surprised because we see a lot of teams going first pick these days. I think both sides are pretty good right now, but there's the Osiris ban. Not surprised, because RelentlessOne has had a lot of trouble there, and right away, the Camazotz ban, since they don't have that counter matchup.
We're going to get a fresh look at a new solo lane matchup here in game number 3 for the first time this set. Odin still takes a back seat. Trick Babushka have to think wisely about who they choose to ban out. Still plenty of high priority options on the board. Persephone tends to be that final ban if you're the second pick in this one. So many viable gods on the table. This is sort of a weird place to be for first pick as well, because you're guaranteed to be giving over 2 very strong gods rather. Yemoja may be the one that jumps first to mind.
Yep, I was going to say, Yemoja's open, so that's where I'd expect Locked and Goated to go. Kukulkan is still up. I'd expect that's where Trick Babushka is going to go with this pick. Naja Kukulkan, I think, makes a ton of sense to me. You don't have to worry too much about Locked and Goated taking Xing Chen. They actually end up going Ho Yi, and maybe that's a response to how much ShadowChair struggled in that last game. I mean, he did very well the first game. I thought that with the Naja back, maybe you see him go back to it. Maybe with the... I don't know. I think that you might see Kukulkan picked up right here by Locked and Goated. Maybe neither team wants him after that last performance. I don't know. It's a little bit surprised to not see him taken off the board yet.
Has been somewhat hit or miss, hasn't it, for Kukulkan today? And Babushka, answer that question. Raijin, likely the mid laner here for Trick Babushka. Kukulkan might end up just foregoing the pick ban phase entirely. Raijin, absolutely a god that we have seen a couple of times and with decent success.
I think Raijin's pretty solid right now. I think he's good enough at all stages of the game. I think his late game is really, really good. Takes a little, he kind of lulls out in the mid game a little bit where he doesn't do so hot, but overall it's a jump to get away from Hades. You can use your ultimate to have big impact in team fights. I don't love it in conjunction with Naja. It's not the one big burst that you necessarily want off of Windfire Wheels, but Raijin's just the all-around mage. I think you can do basically everything you need a mage to do, except for have that one big instant burst of damage. That's the one thing that Trick Babushka might be lacking here.
And Trick Babushka have maybe a little bit of that with Bastet locked in. With plenty of, magical power on the table already between a Yemoja and a Hades, Locked and Goated have felt just fine going into this double hunter composition. They ran it last game, and they're going to run it again here in game number 3, and a tier is going to round out their draft up against maybe a Xing Chen, maybe a Naja there in that solo lane.
Tough to say. I think that either one can work there, Naja or Xing Chen. But Tier's an interesting one. We don't see a lot of Tier these days. Can probably try and just isolate this Naja. Really easy to pick her up. And it's a good god at abusing you if you don't have purification beads, which is going to be pretty easy to get purification beads between Pegon and Cyno and Quig and all the CC those 3 gods have at their disposal. Just a little bit surprised. I don't know. I mean, Brandon was so lane dominant these last few games. And then you give him the Xing Chen as low pressure as you can get. That's conceding the lane entirely for the most part. I mean, it's really, really tough to beat Tier in lane. His heal makes him nearly impossible to really outright beat in the early to mid game. But so same with Camazotz, and Brandon was able to do that. Yeah. So I don't know.
That's true. And we've seen, as you pointed out, a couple of solo kills over the last couple of games, both for brandonballs. I don't know if that matchup, and for the reasons you listed, really screams solo kill potential to me. Maybe if brandonballs overextends, but I'm not sure we'll be seeing quite the same here in game number 3.
No, I don't think so. I think that this is going to be this is usually how it goes, right? I mean, you get to 2 really close games that are pretty down to the wire, and then you get to game 3, and sometimes teams tend to tighten up a little bit. They get a little bit. They start gripping the club too hard, as they would say, if you're playing golf, which I'm definitely not thinking about doing at all. It's very, very difficult to try and stay in the moment and understand that, hey, this game's just like the other 2. The stakes might be a little bit higher, it feels like, but that's not too big of a deal.
Yeah, but Aggro, I don't know how much more socially distant you can be than on a golf course, right? I mean, maybe that's the safest place to be.
We definitely should be able to golf, right? Like, what am I going to do? Catch COVID-19 from the squirrel? Like, I want to go, but I know I shouldn't, so I'm not.
I'm not. If there might be solo kill potential. Eat your words, Aggro. RelentlessOne moves in. brandonballs goes down. To be fair, I was on your team through and through. No chance a solo kill happens, but RelentlessOne returns the favor for games 1 and 2. And the solo kill in the solo lane extends its streak to game 3.
Looks like that blink from Tier caught Brandon a little bit off guard right there. Usually you don't see blink until level 12 in the solo lane, but because Brandon's gone such a low pressure god in Xing Chen, RelentlessOne knows that he can kind of back at his leisure and going for and go whenever he wants back to base and not worry about getting forced out and needing to teleport back. I love this blink pickup early on. It catches Brandon off guard and results in first blood.
Well, a sneaky rotation from Yuji as well, and we'll see the reactions when the duo lane of Locked and Goated realize their purple buff has been taken away. Back they turn, back towards the lane. So a smart rotation there from Yuji, who had his impact on game number 2. Unfortunately, not able to convert that over into a win, but he's going to get his second crack at jungling against Cyno here, who's back on the Hades. And Cyno has already made his presence felt as well, rotating into the Trick Babushka side of the jungle, but I think both of the junglers here now have a pretty big role to play.
It's really been a battle of the two junglers so far in this set, hasn't it? I mean, Yuji stealing Fire Giants in games 1 and 2 has looked very, very good on Bastet, and last game on that Awilix as well, despite the loss. So I think Yuji's really stepped up and had a fantastic set for himself, and Cyno is doing the things you expect Cyno to do. You don't get to be a world champion, world's MVP, and fly under the radar. That's not really how it works. Expectations come with that title, and Cyno, as usual, is delivering as advertised.
And I think expectations not only for Cyno, but really the entire roster of gods specifically for Locked and Goated. Yemoja has firmly been in the ban phase throughout these past few weeks. It's another one of those examples. I mean, we call them prove it games sometimes. Like, you're so constantly banned. I don't think she needs to prove anything necessarily. But you pick this Yemoja and you pick her first overall because you're expecting her to really influence this game in all of the stages.
I think it's usually a little bit more show me, even for gods like Yemoja, if it's game 1 or game 2 of a best of 3 or best of 5, a longer set, because it warps picks and bans if the god that you expect to be permabanned now no longer needs to be respected. It changes the way that you kind of go about everything. It's Pegon in trouble in mid.
He has to leap out, but ShadowChair in range for the follow-up damage. One back to Trick Babushka. 2 members of Locked and Goated on the chase. That's a nice River's Rebuke from Quig to separate this fight, and he gets a kill as well. Mineral pulls one back for Trick Babushka, and Yuji snags another. 1 kill on the board for Big Yuji, 3 total for Trick Babushka. Locked and Goated, they don't leave that one empty-handed, though, with a kill of their own.
Beautiful engagement in the mid lane. Trick Babushka just using these double assassins so well, just as they did in game number 1. Mineral and Yuji working perfectly together. Good damage output there by ShadowChair onto a priority target, and just ends up being perfectly played on that mid lane side, getting Pegon out of the equation early because he's going to be the one dealing the most relevant damage at that point. And that was without DayToRemeber even rotating in. Ẓtuart rotates in, uses his ultimate, uses his dash aggressively, trying to keep a CC chain going, and he ends up paying for it. It's really, really good for DayToRemeber to not even have to worry about rotating to that fight. And still his lane opponent dies, misses some farm on that left-hand side. That's a great spot for the long laner of Trick Babushka.
And hey, I said Quig, you need to show us why this Yemoja is so prioritized, and he did that. Mineral locked down, and Pegon makes good on the CC and pulls 1 for Locked and Goated. Just a bit out of position there is Mineral, so a kill now to the mid lane hunter of Locked and Goated, and we've seen what a fed on her can do today. I'm not going to say that 1 kill is fed, but if Pegon can push this advantage on her, absolutely one that you have to look out for.
It's a great kill pressure god. It's not the best wave clearer necessarily at this point. Got a max impale all the way, but you're still chilling as Anhur at this point. You can still have great kill potential, and getting him back in after losing the death earlier on, it takes that early spill. Getting him back in the kill column is definitely a good sign for Locked and Goated, because Pegon clearly has the ability to bounce back. He did so last game. Ullr wasn't particularly impressive throughout the early stages, then ends up being a huge impact even late into the game as the early game hunter. So no reason to doubt Pegon on the Anhur.
I'm not used to seeing a brawl over the Totem of Ku, but rotation from bigyuji just to help out brandonballs, who's had a rough go of things in this early game. Does get solo killed, and RelentlessOne is also able to rotate and help out with an assist. I suppose if you're looking at an upper for brandonballs, it's that he's even levels-wise. So despite an early game disadvantage, he's been able to remain relevant in the laning phase. It's just now he can convert that into rotations and some help in these team fights.
Yeah, I mean, being down only 500 gold after getting first blooded is really not a bad spot, especially when you consider that it's Xing in the solo lane up against a warrior. You'd expect him to be losing more blue buffs, but Brandon has been pretty consistent at getting his own blues. There haven't been a lot of rotations over from Cyno in order to try and catch him, which is where you expect that to start to give him problems, but it's still not too big of a deal.
brandonballs and RelentlessOne both having to use their ultimates there. One to engage, one to disengage, as brandonballs makes his way back to where he's been farming effectively throughout this laning phase beneath his tier 1 tower. So you're right, though. It is about a 500 gold lead for Locked and Goated, with Gold Fury usually that first big firework fight that we see in this game. Oracles could start off and maybe tilt that towards one team or the other. But I think that looming threat of a hunter in the middle lane and a hunter in the long lane, the pinch potential of those two makes that Gold Fury a little bit more scary for Trick Babushka.
Specifically, these two hunters as well, because Hachiman has the Heavenly Banner, which is an attack speed steroid for anybody who stands in it. That means Pegon's damage shoots up pretty significantly. And Pegon on the Anhur, his passive is applying that physical protection debuff against the enemy team, so that's Prot Tread on the Gold Fury that makes Ẓtuart hit even harder. So it's not just double hunter, it's these two hunters that will help each other out at the exact same time. It will not take long for them to burn this Gold Fury down. It'll be gone fairly quickly.
Not, though, that ShadowChair on the Raijin is anything to scoff at. Picks up Doom Orb for plenty of power for the first item. Maybe sensing a small skirmish over here on the right side jungle. Quig is going to try to disengage. River's Rebuke will not be successful in doing so, as ShadowChair snags a kill for Trick Babushka. Up to the sky goes Cyno, thanks to the Windfire Wheels of Mineral. And he's not able to escape the grasp. The beads were used, and the kill is found nonetheless. Trick Babushka, they pull up 2 more.
Bit of a not great beads usage there from Cyno, isn't it? I mean, he goes into the beads after he's already been hit by that Naja ultimate, trying to stop a potential jump in from Raijin Mez or a knock up from Brandon, but he's going to die either way there. Now he's even more vulnerable to Mineral, as Ẓtuart might get soloed over here on the left, costs him his beads, trying to hold on to them, but loses beads and ult off that stun.
So the game of potential solo kills, it's been in the solo lane most of all, but duo lane now, which has turned more into a long solo lane, has been left alone, and DayToRemeber feeling comfortable with an engagement onto Ẓtuart, and you point out beads used there as well. But we talked about the Raijin a little bit prior to that skirmish. Doom Orb, first item overall. You know, Raijin, obviously mixed emotion on where he belongs, where he should be prioritized, but when we've seen him, it's looked good, and certainly plenty of damage to be found in this game.
And ShadowChair's had a bigger impact this game than he did all of last game. He's 2-1-3. He's been a part of every kill so far for Trick Babushka, and now he can build into Divine Ruin, which is going to be perfect against this setup from Locked and Goated, who continue to pick lots of sustain all at once. It really incentivizing the enemy team to get anti-heal and have it be even better against multiple members of their team. Divine's going to be great against Cyno, it's going to be great against Quig, and it's going to be great against RelentlessOne. And it's, again, not a huge damage loss anyways. I'd expect that to be the next item for sure for ShadowChair.
Gold Fury continuing to be the ire of everyone's eye here as Mineral gets locked down, but he's able to escape. Cyno is taken low, has his ultimate if need be. A collapse from Trick Babushka seems imminent as he jumps into the back line and finds Quig, who's so low. Nice sash from Mineral is going to secure the CC, but Ẓtuart turns it around in exchange for a 1-for-1. Both Guardians gone in this fight, so we do still have a 4 versus 4, but not quite, as RelentlessOne still over in that solo lane. Red buff locked down. seemingly by Pegon. ShadowChair sees a small opening, plugs away, a little bit of damage, ultimate popped, one final shot, he finds it from range, but Ẓtuart turns around the damage as well. Cyno pops his ulti, pulls some in, but all he finds is death on the other end of that one, fitting for a Hades. Trick Babushka, 2 kills, do lose 1.
Good aggressiveness from ShadowChair. He gets a 2 for 1 in his team's favor. Yeah, he ends up dying. Maybe he didn't need to miss the Raijin, which forces him to commit the ultimate, which buys enough time for Locked and Goaded to rotate over. It just feels like that should have been going a little bit better. But at the end of the day, 2 for 1, you take those. Just feel like Trick Babushka's got to get more of a lead. I mean, they've gotten a lot of kills so far, Dave, but the gold lead really isn't there. It's about 500 gold before this Gold Fury goes down at the very least.
We'll spike up here. The XP differential, the notable difference, 12 and 45 seconds into this game. There's a little bit of spike for gold for you. Now extending down to about 1,000 as some farm is going to pull things back either way. But it is the XP differential that's the largest one, but it's not wide necessarily. bigyuji has about a 1-level lead, and Mineral has a similar lead as well. Gold Fury locked down, but that's an interesting point to maybe bring up. Obviously, plenty of objective burn for Locked and Goaded, and Trick Babushka have some of the same as well. As we look towards some of these contested objectives, notably the Fury that just went down, and then Fire Giant later into this game, who are you feeling more comfortable on securing these objectives?
Well, I mean, I guess it's got to be Trick Babushka, right? Or no, the answer should be whoever doesn't start it. That should be the answer.
Right, the enemy
We've
team.
seen very poor secure on today in general. Neither team has great secure. I already highlighted why Locked and Goaded do objectives pretty well between the Hachiman and the Anhur. But Trick Babushka, I mean, Raijin's damage isn't too bad. Hoyi a little bit low on the DPS side, but if he all ends with the ultimate, that boosts his numbers up pretty effectively. Realistically, both these teams are going to need to win a fight before they go for the objective.
Are we flipping a coin?
Yeah, we're pretty close to flipping the coin. I don't love either team secure. I wouldn't be doing any sort of objectives with multiple members of the enemy team around, either way.
RelentlessOne, the objective for Trick Babushka. Tier under some duress, knocks back a few. Plenty of survivability, but plenty is not enough this time around. brandonballs locks down the kill, so Trick Babushka widen that gap just a little bit wider. 1.5k gold lead after that Gold Fury is locked down. Now with 30 seconds left without a solo laner, that's probably the tier 1 tower in that short lane taken down. And that's when you see the gold lead start to spike, these permanent objectives taken off the board.
I mean, this is kind of more the same, isn't it? RelentlessOne ends up getting picked off, a little bit too aggressive, not great ward vision, high on his side of the map, and Trick Babushka is able to make an easy rotation over and kill him without expending a whole lot. Just brandonballs ultimate, and Brandon's got 20% CDR, 30% if he had blue at the time, so he's chilling using that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Despite that first blood pickup for RelentlessOne, which is obviously great, he's behind now in this lane, and Brandon continues to make a pretty solid impact in this set.
I would be nervous as well that Cyno is a little bit behind, but this is a very similar spot to where we saw him in game number 2 before he ganked the long lane a couple of times in a row and really got him and his team back into it. Not sure that DayToRemeber will be making the same mistake, though, this time around. So then the question right back to bigyuji, who for the 3rd time in this set has himself a decent slash line going at 207. This Bastet, I think, needs to continue to do what he has been doing up to this point, finding ganks, finding damage, and helping his team stay in the lead.
Yuji's played great. He's continued to be really fantastic so far. As what do you know? RelentlessOne a little bit too far forward. No one even close to his side of the map. And it's going to take a couple ultimates, but they're going to kill him.
Yeah, but aggro, there's a blue buff over there for RelentlessOne to grab. That's maybe worth it. No, it's not. Not at all. He goes down. brandonballs finds his 2nd kill of the game. Elsewhere on the map, though, a similar vibe to what we just saw in the solo lane as a few members of Locked and Goaded make their way beneath the tower to clean up DayToRemeber. So 1 kill traded out on either side of the map. Still a tier 1 tower to be found in the long lane. No tier 1 tower in the short lane, though, as they've abandoned the short lane either way. And Locked and Goaded, they want to take that kill and get out alive, but with a minute left on that Fury respawn, this could open the door to some deep warding and really taking control of this left side.
Man, I mean, in that situation where you know that you're 4-man ganking the solo lane, it's really DayToRemeber's job to just not die in that moment. All he has to do is back it up. If they want to take tier 1 tower, they're going to take it. We've already full committed to killing this tier on the right-hand side. Just doesn't respect the amount of people and the amount of damage that Locked and Goated have on the duo side of the map. They take him down pretty quickly. But they don't get the tier 1 tower. It's still not too bad, but DayToRemeber using both relics and still dying, that's concerning, because now it means this very important Gold Fury fight that could either break the game wide open for Trick Babushka or end up pulling Locked and Goated back into this game. Just got a lot easier for the Order side knowing the enemy Hunter doesn't have any defensive relics.
And that fight could potentially begin as soon as now, but the Fury won't be up for 5 more seconds. And it's an important one to secure this time around as the Fury pops out of the ground. Primal Fury next on the menu. Trick Babushka are going to pivot themselves through. RelentlessOne, aggressive blink into Trick Babushka here. Doesn't find much. A pillar is going to separate the two teams for the time being, and they'll back off and take a breather. But aggressive from RelentlessOne to try to pick a fight.
Interesting pickup by Mineral. I thought it might be a cursed Ankh selection once he hits 12. It's actually a Phantom, and we don't usually see these against Yemoja quite yet, but I think it certainly makes sense. River's Rebuke is pretty impactful.
He's got a couple locked in, but ShadowChair is able to move his way out of it. Mineral sends Ẓtuart up to the sky, but they come crashing back down with a little follow-up from Trick Babushka. Locked and Goated, still 5 members, still near this Primal Fury. 3 ultimates ready to go for Trick Babushka. The leap in from bigyuji is going to find a little bit of damage, but he has to leap right on back out. ShadowChair is going to poke some damage, prevent Locked and Goated from fully re-engaging, but they're so low. 2 members on red health bars, the other 3 near the yellow space. RelentlessOne is locked down. bigyuji finds the first kill in this fight after a bit of a war of attrition there, but Trick Babushka played zone, and now they might just get a Fury.
Cyno gonna blink past Brandon though. Trick Babushka's already gotten the Primal Fury, and Cyno has full committed. No ultimate for him, but he might be able to just walk out.
Wow, Mineral still alive back behind the pillar. Pegon, though, finishes off that kill. Trick Babushka do end up getting the Fury, so a win there for them. But a nice re-engage from Locked and Goated after what looked like a sweeping team fight win from Trick Babushka. They stayed alive, and thanks in part to that, Yemoja could sustain enough to get right back in.
Yeah, that's not only the sustain from Yemoja, but Hades can keep this sustain going. Once he's near a minion wave, keep the siege going. A tier 1 tower in left. I mean, I don't blame Trick Babushka for thinking, hey, we should just fight this. These guys are crazy for coming back in, but kind of undervalue how much sustain this team really has.
I couldn't tell you, Aggro. This is another game, 20 minutes in. The gold lead is 3,000 in favor of Trick Babushka. Locked and Goated 4 kills behind. Only 3 towers, though, left standing for Trick Babushka. The map objectives in favor of Locked and Goated. We'll see about the numbers objectives. Pegon, he rejoins. bigyuji, see you later. Does end up getting the kill onto Ẓtuart thanks to the tick damage. So it's a 1-for-1 trade. I'm sure bigyuji would have rather stayed alive. Pegon rejoins the fight at the proper time, or joins maybe for the first time. It is a 1-for-1. Ẓtuart out for Yuji.
RelentlessOne again going aggressive. Felt like that shouldn't have necessarily been a kill, though, onto Ẓtuart. Quig had the Omi in order to try and get that, but Ẓtuart ran away from him instead of stepping up and just receiving those mending waters. That's got to run to your healer at all times. That's a cross-game sort of notion that holds true in Smite as well.
Oh, everywhere, yeah.
Ẓtuart doesn't go in the right spot. Dave, yeah, you know a thing or two about running the healer, right? That's a thing they say in Paladins.
Oh, yeah. It's VHS on the old system. I need healing, and it doesn't matter if you're going to run away from them constantly. Cyno will hope to run away, and will use his ultimate, and he's going to dash away instead. Has the speed buff, but maybe not fast enough. Quig trying to get his jungler out of danger. Some good healing, but only extends his life another second or so. Now, with no Omi, Quig is going to have to move away. RelentlessOne potentially overextended. Mineral looks for the stun, is not able to find it still, though Trick Babushka have found themselves a small advantage, mitigated by the fact that bigyuji still in the mid lane pushing down this tier 1 tower. So numbers-wise, even on the right side of the map, but a tier 1 tower in the mid lane under duress.
This should be a pretty easy Pyromancer, though, for Trick Babushka. I mean, Yuji's going to be able to make sure that no one can really rotate in because he would collapse underneath them. How about the game that ShadowChair is having? Much, much better this time around. He's top player damage by a considerable margin on the Raijin.
That is Fire Giant, though, started up. You'll need some damage to win the fight and take the FG. They peel off to try to re-engage onto Locked and Goaded. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel catches out one, but brandonballs taken too low as Ẓtuart turns around the damage onto the solo laner of Trick Babushka instead. bigyuji a bit caught out here by the blue buff, has to leap away. Maybe a collapse still, but RelentlessOne finds himself in the middle of 3 members of Trick Babushka, burns the active, down comes the banner, and Ẓtuart finishes off that kill with ease. And what looked like a great start to this fight for Trick Babushka suddenly collapsing around them as RelentlessOne will continue. The onslaught, ShadowChair pulls up into the ultimate, but Cyno, he's back from respawn and he's back for blood. Mineral, bye-bye, 45 seconds on the respawn. Fire Giant, maybe the ire of Locked and Goated's eye.
I mean, no front line at all, but Brandon does have his TP up. He could potentially upgrade this once he respawns, but I don't think he's going to have time. RelentlessOne, good zone on a ShadowChair, and that's going to be a Fire Giant for Locked and Goated. That's sustained by this Yemoja. Quig makes a couple really good plays there. River's Rebuke does enough. He has a great portal to actually bounce Mineral back and force him into a bad spot, even with the Shield of Regrowth and the ultimate. Mineral still gets caught by RelentlessOne. Yuji gets caught out off a great jump in and impale there by Pegon. He makes great individual play. And the sustain coming through, despite all this anti-heal on the other side. Trick Babushka doing nearly everything they can. The only thing they're missing is a Pestilence or a Contagion. Short of that, and a Cursed Ankh, which we've already said they're not going to get because of that Phantom pickup for Mineral. I don't know what else they can really do. They've got to try and maybe burn Quig down himself. Quig's done a great job of staying really far back. He's basically playing Yemoja like a mage. He's playing with backline positioning, and then just repositioning and making sure that his team is moving where he wants them to. The enemy team isn't going to be able to follow. And of course, the healing and the shielding output has been phenomenal.
Yeah, 8K almost from Quig in the healing department. Cyno has 3,000 and some change, so Trick Babushka might have to mitigate that to give themselves a fighting chance here. RelentlessOne has been the aggressor more recently for Locked and Goated. Will continue to do the same in this long lane as the Gold Fury has respawned. The previous 2 have been taken by Trick Babushka, and they'll look to make that a 3 for 3. Looks like Trick Babushka are just going to let him have it. Locked and Goated are instead going to turn this one around and take their first Fury of the game as underneath their Tier 2 tower await Trick Babushka for what will be a Fire Giant siege. I'm not sure you stand by and defend these, though. Phoenixes are much safer.
They are only down about 1,000 gold, though, and you don't really want to give up this much across the enemy team. I mean, do you really want to give up 3k gold between left and mid? Don't think a 3k is going to make or break you, though.
Well, the Tier 2 tower ends up falling nonetheless, despite Trick Babushka being close by. RelentlessOne this time disengages, thanks to the ultimate, and with 5 members still with the Fire Giant buff. Left side Phoenix open for Locked and Goated, right side Phoenix open as well. There is a Tier 2 tower in mid lane that separates Locked and Goated from that mid lane Phoenix. Mineral does not have the Windfire wheels for this fight, and that's been a big engaged tool as RelentlessOne finds himself in the back line. The final Tier 2 tower of this game will go down, and Locked and Goated, still with the Fire Giant buff, might just back themselves off and buy some of those items.
Playing it pretty slow, though. I mean, they've got Fire Giant still for about 1:20. That's not really enough time to fully reset and give a good Phoenix siege. You can try 1, maybe 2 waves, but I like the call overall to reset because look at how much gold everyone had in hand. Cyno had nearly 4,000 gold in his pocket whenever he backs, but everybody else right around that 2k mark. You got plenty to spend in that opportunity, and that golden pocket doesn't do anything for you in order to try and get you advantageous for the next fight. You've got to actually spend it before it's going to help you out at all. We see teams make that mistake all the time. They get a big fight, they're up 1,000,000 gold all of a sudden, but they never reset but spend that gold to actually make it relevant. Locked and Goated playing this one nice and slow.
Does a gold lead mean anything at this point in this set? Apparently not. Prior to that Fire Giant, a 3k gold lead for Trick Babushka. That has now been wiped off the map. This game, I think now, I asked you whose set this was to lose prior to this game, and where we stand 26 minutes in, just momentum, gold, XP, whatever you want to look at, seems like Locked and Goated's to lose at this point.
Agreed, and they haven't lost a full 5-on-5 yet with this composition because no one's been able to really punish Quig on this Yemoja quite yet. And until that happens, I don't really see Trick Babushka turning this one around. They've got to try to find a way to make Quig less effective in this team fight. And whether that's damage coming from ShadowChair, he's finished off an Obsidian Shard now, so he's hitting a lot harder. Yuji with that Heartseeker is going to help out quite a bit. He's got to find better targets. Last time he got absolutely crushed by Pegon in that team fight. If Yuji and ShadowChair can be a little bit more effective in this next engagement, they've been plenty effective so far this game. Those are the 2 top player damages for Trick Babushka. They've got to try and find it even more because these last few team fights have all gone the way of the Order side.
And there is some ward coverage back behind that Harpy pit, but not enough that make Trick Babushka feel comfortable moving through, as the 2 directly behind the pit are both for Locked and Goated. And with a double Hunter composition, Trick Babushka have to be nervous. I mean, for all they know, this thing is getting melted down. This Fire Giant, at least in the next 30 seconds, will be getting melted down unless they move in and try to face check it. They've sensed Mineral off to their side, and with Fire Giant not yet up, Locked and Goated won't turn their heads towards that one. But now we'll find out if these teams, they want to fight beforehand, or they just want to turn and burn the objective. Because as we've pointed out in previous conversations, the secure isn't fantastic from either side, but Locked and Goated have enough damage that they could burn it quick enough that Trick Babushka might not have time to react.
Still, Trick Babushka, you feel like should have everything dedicated to defending this Fire Giant, because this is not a we can't defend, we got to send under Phoenix situation. This isn't a, oh, they've got such better secure than us and it's not really worth our time to try and take this fight sort of situation. 4K at 28 minutes is really not super scary. It's not super relevant to you at this point. So I think that I like Trick Babushka being here, and they really shouldn't be caught off guard by any pull. That no matter how fast Lock can go to do this Fire Giant, even with that upgraded Frenzy from Quig, there should be some sort of contest here from Trick Babushka.
And really the only item missing is ShadowChair with 1 slot open, and now we'll just see how fast Fire Giant gets melted down by Locked and Goated, as Ẓtuart and Pegon have made their way onto it, and fast is the answer. A couple members of Trick Babushka went back to base, and they're not in range to contest this one. Cyno has found the kill onto DayToRemeber. This could be the disastrous final fight if Locked and Goated can find just a little bit more. bigyuji taken low, but not low enough to finish off the kill. It's 1 kill and a Fire Giant over to Locked and Goated. 3 open Phoenixes, 45 seconds on the DayToRemeber death timer.
Should have known, man. I mean, I say they shouldn't get caught off guard, so of course they're going to. 2 people back. DayToRemeber starts walking towards red. He gets spotted on a ward. Of course, Locked and Goated's going to full-on commit. And then Day dies without using a single relic. That's just sloppy smite by Trick Babushka.
And now you have to win a 4 versus 5 fight. Cyno doesn't have the complete one-shot damage, but he got pretty close there. Right side Phoenix taken low as Mineral has to dash away in the back line. And Locked and Goated will just turn their attention elsewhere. Suddenly it's 3 members, despite 4 being alive, left defending this Titan. Locked and Goated. They've got the numbers. That's a nice Rivers Rebuke. Titan down to half health. Locked and Goated have pulled it out of base. Locked and Goated. They look to melt it down. Some good knockups there. Down goes a couple of Fears, but it's not enough for Trick Babushka to turn it around. Locked and Goated. They take the game and they take the set.
Man, I was getting a little nervous there for Locked and Goated for a second, but they end up closing it out in about 30 minutes. And just, I mean, I feel like Trick Babushka played Smite really, really well today. And that's what makes high-level MOBAs in general, but certainly Smite really, really hard. That it takes one mistake to lose you a game. And it only took 1 there. Well, I guess it was 2 back-to-back. But DayToRemeber dying with relics up, and 3 people backing off Fire Giant is far too many when you know they've got double Hunter and a Frenzy. Locked and Goated do not take very long to kill that Fire Giant, and unfortunately, it just ends up costing Trick Babushka.
You look at the KDAs for everyone in this game, and it'd be hard to tell me which team won. No real standout except maybe Ẓtuart at 5-2-4 on that Hachiman. This is something, obviously, that Locked and Goated enjoy. This double Hunter composition, 17,000 damage, good for 2nd highest in the game, only ShadowChair higher. I think now it's something not only Trick Babushka, but any team playing against Locked and Goated, and maybe anyone in this region, because obviously it's a team composition that works. you need to be prepared that Locked and Goated are going to make a double hunter composition work.
They, especially when Cyno's playing that Hades jungle, you gotta. That's kind of going to be the next idea, and I think that Trick Babushka caught on to that really well. Remember, they banned 2 hunters away during the second banning phase. It's just that Pegon still found one in the Anhur that made it work well enough. But I still feel like Quig on this Yemoja enabled far too much for this composition. It gave them enough protection, enough healing, and enough setup and team fight dividing that it was very, very difficult for Trick Babushka to end up getting through onto these double hunters. You can't stop them from picking double hunter. There's a million hunters to choose from. They'll find 2 that are working well enough together. I think the Yemoja was the big breaking point there. I don't know how much I love Trick Babushka giving that one up.
I still think, though, if you look at Trick Babushka specifically at bigyuji, he had a big day today, a couple steals that helped his team remain in some of those games. So I think some good absolutely to build on if you're Trick Babushka. But we'll take a quick look at the schedule and see what we saw this week in the SCC. Europe was the week of 2-0s as Cold Llamas find back-to-back 2-0s. The Poppies as well, or rather, Belt Slap find back-to-back 2-0s, with Poppies and Cold Llamas each having won themselves. Locked and Goated, a couple wins for them, but Elevate and Bloogie and the Woogies do the same over here in North America. So a rough week for Trick Babushka, especially when you come that close to at least finding 1 win. They now find themselves at 0-4 down at the bottom of the standings. Maybe most surprising here is that Basket and the boys do end up losing 1 game, but it is a race for first with 3 teams at 3-1.
I do believe that was a forfeit up against Bloogie and the Woogies for what it's worth. So I don't think that they've played and lost quite yet. But Bloogie and the Woogies is a team to watch out for, man. I mean, that team now has Aninster and Aquarius on their roster. So that's a formidable roster. I wish they could have played that one out because I think that would have been a really fun one to watch.
And it was indeed a forfeit that gave them that 1 loss up there at the top of the standings. But as competitive as Europe is, and we've seen those standings, I think NA is, kind of just the same. I mean, there is the one team in Trick Babushka that has some catching up to do. But with just 4 games in here in the SCC, I couldn't tell you who's going to win.
That's the fun of it, man. I mean, the SCC last year, the Smite Minor League was competitive basically from day 1 all the way through to the end. I think that we're going to see a lot of the same this year. There is the top end up against the bottom end for sure, but clearly it's not cut and dry. I mean, the team winless right now, Trick Babushka, played really, really good Smite up against Locked and Goated and took a game, nearly took a set. So you really can't count out any team in either region right now in the SCC.
Absolutely, and a bit of a different week for us here in the SCC since we had two EU games, 2 NA games. So a bit of a different day for us tomorrow. We'll still be in action, but we're going to be broadcasting the Pittsburgh Knights tournament tomorrow, so make sure to tune in for that one. That one should be a lot of fun, Agro. I mean, we've seen these league matches, teams moving their way up and down the standings, but a true full-blown Smite tournament this early on is going to be a lot of fun to watch. That one is live at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so make sure to tune into that. Grab yourself some Smite action on this Sunday. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. I've been Dolson. That's been Agro on behalf of us and everyone back in production. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it.